In the beginning, we find a man and a girl exchanging sword attacks in a battlefield in front of a large number of fans, each trying to gain an advantage over the other until the man wearing a half mask finally wins. And when the girl realizes that she is soaked in her own blood, she admits defeat and apologizes to someone named Ayato. During the last century, an unprecedented event called inversia caused the world to change drastically as never before, gradually changing people's morals and resulting in the birth of humans with extraordinary physical abilities called genostealers who compete in recreational fights called Vista. Ayato, who is mistaken for a girl at first glance because of his suspicious hairstyle, climbs the tree like a monkey to quickly reach the window from which the girl's handkerchief fell, but he is surprised when he arrives at the window of the locker room. Ayato looked at the half-naked pink-haired girl named Julis before he realized the situation and nervously told her that he had come to give her the handkerchief she had dropped, then turned to the other side to finish dressing. She takes the handkerchief from him, feeling grateful to him because it is very dear to her, and tells him that she owes him even though he found the handkerchief by chance. Ayato feels that she is exaggerating a lot and is surprised by her change in behavior due to his intrusion during her change of clothes.
I'ma eat it.
Ayato realizes that Julis is a flame witch and decides to jump out of the window before he dies from her attack. He manages to dodge her flames, which cause a huge explosion, and Alexia follows him and expresses her admiration for his ability to dodge the attack. Ayato ended up confronting Julis in the academy's garden courtyard in front of all the students because of the noise she made. He asked her why her behavior changed after thanking him, and she said that she intended to make him pay for sneaking up on a girl and peeking at her. He told her that he didn't mean it and that he had just moved to the academy today and didn't know the places inside very well yet. She found that he might be right and decided not to punish him even though her anger was still burning inside her. Then they introduced each other and she told him that she was in the 5th rank of the academy. Then she touches the red lotus badge on her shirt and a bright light shines on him, and he is surprised that she challenges him in public to an honorable duel.
I beg your pardon?
And if he wins, she will forgive him for what he did and withdraw quietly. But if she wins, she will have the right to do whatever she wants with him. Ayato argues that he is still new to the academy and does not even have a sword, so one of the students throws a weapon at him, feeling frustrated that he has no choice but to accept the challenge and will look like a coward if he refuses. Even though he is already a coward, Julis pulls out her sword to prepare for the duel. In a matter of seconds, the fight begins and Julis attacks with his flame spear technique, but he keeps dodging them one by one, and then she decides to repeat her attack with the spear's speed increased, making it more difficult for him. Although he was still on defense, she was amazed at his ability to dodge her techniques, as he should be reduced to ashes if he was a mid-level opponent, so she decided to increase the level of her attacks to test his stamina. Then she aimed a giant fireball at him at high speed, and Ayato rushed towards the ball, realizing that he intended to dodge it and get close enough to attack her, so she blew the ball in his face and thought she had succeeded in inflicting great damage on him. She was surprised to see that he used his dragon twin technique to dodge the fire, then rushed towards her, grabbed her sword hand and fell on top of her on the ground. She was surprised that he deliberately got so close to her. Then she noticed that a spear of light was aimed at her and that Ayato was trying to protect her. Ayato found himself in an enviable position after he touched her breast, so he quickly retreated and apologized to her, at which point Claudia, the president of the student council known as the Red Lotus, interrupted their conversation and decided to stop the fight because Ayato's transfer papers were incomplete. Ayato is surprised that Claudia is a first-year student at the academy despite being the president of the Red Lotus and asks him to talk to her informally since they are in the same class. She welcomes him as a new student at Saidoken Academy and tells him that all he has to do to fulfill the academy's expectations of him is to win, as they are in constant challenges with 5 other academies whose students are all genostealer elites. I then went on to explain that every year the 6 academies, including their own, fight for supremacy in a tournament called Vista to attract the attention of the whole world, and in recent years the academy's record has become quite shameful. She tells him that he has to work hard to win this year's tournament, and if he does, the academy will fulfill all his requests no matter what. He simply tells her that he doesn't care about Vista and the academy's prestige, and that he joined because he has information that his sister Haruka used to attend the academy. She showed him a record of a girl who attended the academy 5 years ago but withdrew after only 6 months for personal reasons, and although all her information was erased, Ayato was able to recognize her facial features as his sister. Claudia told him that she had never participated in the Vista tournament, nor had she entered the named sex, making it questionable whether or not she had attended the academy, and then showed him a picture of an amazing sword known as the Orglux, a deadly weapon containing an extremely powerful core. Ayato resigned himself to the fact that he didn't come to the academy to look for her, and when Claudia asked him why, he said he came to find out what he was supposed to do. He was curious to take a look at the Cerberista sword she had just shown him, so she told him she would arrange it and then gave him a temporary sword to use for the duration of his time at the academy. When he asked her about his incomplete transfer papers, he was surprised when she hugged him from behind and told him it was a lie so she could stop the fight since Julius is obedient to the rules. Kyuko introduces him to his classmates and asks him to sit next to Julius from now on, making her feel angry but unable to refuse. In the evening after class, Ayato offered to become friends despite what happened the first time they met, and she told him that she owed him for helping her this morning even though she was still angry at his behavior and would help him if he ever needed it, and then she rushed out. Aishiro tells him that she deliberately keeps her distance from everyone and reaches out to shake his hand, saying that he will be his roommate from now on. Ayato then notices that he calls Julius a princess and tells him that she's a real princess, not a fake one, as she is the crown princess of the kingdom of Lizzeltania. Ayato wondered that a princess like her chose to join the academy to compete in the Vista tournament, so he told him that this question is on everyone's mind, but she rejects everyone who tries to approach her, and she was able to defeat everyone she faced in one-on-one duels. Ayato returns the weapon Ayato gave him during his fight with her, and Aishiro is surprised to realize that he was the one in the crowd who gave him the sword. He says he has mixed feelings about it, because if he hadn't thrown him the weapon, he wouldn't have had to face Julius in the first place. They find Julius being harassed by a big guy named Lester, who wants to duel her, but she refuses to accept his challenge. So they hide in the bushes, and Aishiro decides to take advantage of the scoop and film what's going on. Julius approaches Lester and tells him that she's already beaten him 3 times before, so she thinks it's useless to duel him. He gets angry and pulls out his gun for insisting on dueling her here and now, so she tells him that he needs to prove he's worthy of her and duel someone else. As she is about to leave, he catches her and tells her that he will not allow himself to be defeated by a girl like her who does it for fun. She gets angry and burns his hand and tells him that she has a goal to achieve, and to do that she has to win the Vista tournament, and Ayato realizes that she is on a completely different level than the rest of the students. Ayato had a dream about his childhood when he got into a fight with a group of children who spoke badly about his sister in front of him. He was scolded by his father and forbidden to fight again. When he was angry at his father's decision, Haruka told him that he did it because he had excessive strength that could hurt him before others, and that he would be able to use his strength when he learned how to use it and found what he had to do, so he decided to use his strength to protect her. Ayato woke up in the morning and went out for a run. He remembered yesterday when he met Julius, and Lester almost attacked him when he saw him, but his friends warned him not to do that in a public place, so he decided to leave and vowed to Julius that he would not give up until he made her recognize his abilities. After he leaves, she tells Ayato that the academy is not the peaceful place he imagined it to be, and he is curious as to why she is fighting at the academy, and is surprised when she tells him that she needs money and must win the Vista tournament. Aishiro joins them and asks her if she has found a partner to compete in the tournament since it is a team tournament. Ayato realizes that she doesn't have any friends, which makes her angry, and says that it has nothing to do with not finding a partner to enter the tournament with her, but rather that she hasn't found anyone who meets her criteria. After Aishiro asks her what kind of partner she's looking for, they find that she's looking for someone close to perfect, and her hopes are very high. Then he gets an urgent call and decides to leave in a hurry. As Julius is about to leave as well, Ayato asks her where the boys' locker room is, and Julius bursts out laughing and told him that he should have read the orientation map in the morning as a freshman. She was surprised to find him looking at her adoringly and embarrassed when he told her that he didn't think she was the kind of person who had a great smile. She changed the subject and showed him where the locker room was. He then asked her to show him around the academy in her free time, and maybe he would need to take a tour of the city too. When she refused, he told her that she owed him and that she would pay him back. She found that she had no choice but to fulfill his request, and they agreed to take him around the academy tomorrow, and the city tour will be on the weekend. After he finished his morning training, he went to the academy, and when he went to class, he greeted Julius, and everyone was amazed that she responded to him. When Ayato sat down, he noticed a girl sleeping at the next table and was surprised that it was his childhood friend Saya. Aishiro asked if they knew each other, and Ayato said that he hadn't seen her for 6 years after she emigrated with her family. When he asked her how her father was doing, she told him that he was the one who asked her to enroll in the academy to demonstrate the gun he invented and used in the Vista tournament, and that she had her own reasons, which are considered a secret. Aishiro approached her and wrote down everything she said until she pointed her gun at his head. Then Kyuko's teacher entered the classroom and went over to her to ask her why she was absent yesterday, and she honestly said that she had overslept. Kyuko got angry and hit her head, then told her that she would have to take extra classes on her days off as punishment. Ayato realized that she was still having trouble waking up early, while Julius was a little jealous of his interest in her. Afterwards, she went to the bathroom and applied some makeup to get his attention, then returned to class to tell him it was time to give him a tour of the academy. Saya was surprised to learn of their agreement, but Julius told her that she had nothing to do with it. Saya decides to replace her and take Ayato Ayato on the tour, but Jules refuses because she doesn't want to break her promise to him, and they argue about it in front of him until Claudia joins them and decides to take him on the tour instead. Ayato realizes that's why she came in the first place, and before she leaves, she tells the girls that she's going to get Ayato for herself tomorrow. Jules is mad that Claudia has bigger bazongas and Saya agrees. Of course she does. There's nothing in there. Ayato then gets the idea that Jules and Saya should take him for a ride together to resolve the dispute. After that, the three of them started their tour around the academy, and it seemed like Jules was giving Saya a tour too, as she didn't say a word and some of the places seemed new to her since she's not a regular attendee. Ayato decided to take a break for a while, and when he went to get drinks, Saya wondered why Jules was taking him on a tour, and she told her that she owed him for helping her in the middle of their fight. Knowing that she fought Ayato last night and is still alive, Saya is impressed by how strong she is, but Jules tells her that she is still at the same level as her, which is not enough to fight someone like Ayato. Jules felt that Saya seemed a bit cocky and suggested a fight against her to prove it. Just as they were about to summon their weapons, they were suddenly attacked by an arrow, and Jules remembered that it was the same attack she had suffered yesterday. She used her power against the unknown person who fired the arrows at her, but another person with a lighted axe appeared and blocked her flames, but Saya took advantage of his lax defense and managed to hit him with a lethal projectile, then fired another projectile that destroyed the water fountain. After the assassins escaped, Jules realized how strong Saya was and retreated from the idea of challenging her for the time being. Ayato returned to them and was surprised to see that their clothes were wet, so he looked away after the situation became embarrassing for them, except for Saya with no bra because she's flat. The next day, Ayato wonders if they will be able to catch the criminals who tried to attack the two girls, and Claudia tells him that they don't have any proof yet and the investigation is still ongoing by the Astros City Police. On their way to the testing room, they meet Lester, and Claudia realizes that they've already met after Lester was furious to see him, and when they go inside the room, she tells him that he will be allowed to try the weapon of his choice if the compatibility exceeds 80%. Then he was surprised that Lester chose the sword of Cerberista before him, which is the weapon he wants to get because his sister used to use it in the past. Then he suddenly felt as if he was chained around him when he saw the power of the sword, but he ignored it. Lester's compatibility with the sword was only 32%, which made him angry, and when he kept holding the weapon pushed him away, and Ayato realized that what he had heard about Oracle weapons having a will of their own was true. Lester did not give up and approached the sword again in an attempt to subdue it. Claudia said that Cerberista cannot be subdued by force alone, and the weapon continued to push him away until the compatibility rate reached less than 1%, and when the compatibility rate became negative, his teammates began screaming at him to retreat immediately. Ayato was surprised when the sword turned directly towards him. When he got close enough, the sword started attacking him without warning. Ayato dodged the attacks until he was able to grab his hilt and force it into the ground, telling the sword that he didn't like to be humiliated like him. The sword then returned to normal and complied with Ayato and found that his compatibility with the weapon reached 97%, allowing him to try the sword or own it. On their day off, Ayato is impressed when he sees Jules wearing an elegant dress outside the academy. She feels ashamed when he admires her different look and says it's just a temporary outfit she decided to wear after her kingdom sent it to her. Then they began their tour around Sterisk, showing him the most famous landmarks and buildings. After some time, Jules stopped in front of a picture of a meal at a famous restaurant in the city, and Ayato decided to have lunch here according to her wishes. Ayato marveled at Jules' spontaneous behavior, which did not indicate that she was a princess at all, as princesses do not go to lunch at hamburger restaurants, so she told him that she had heard about this place from friends back home. He then thought to talk to her about the attack she had suffered twice and suggested that she shouldn't go out alone or duel until the perpetrator was discovered, but she refused to change her routine for the sake of some cowards who attacked in the shadows. Lester and his friends joined them. Jules was annoyed by his constant pursuit of her, and when he challenged her to a fight here and now, she told him, as usual, that she wasn't interested in a fight against him. Ayato stood in front of him and told him that his behavior made him suspect that he was one of the cowards who attacked Jules yesterday. Lester was furious and decided to take care of him first before dueling Jules. Ayato, in turn, refused to fight a useless person like him. As he grew angrier, his friends calmed him down and convinced him to wait for the right opportunity to defeat them honorably, so he left quietly, still feeling angry. In the evening, Ayato expressed his pleasure at the time he had spent with her. On their way back, they found some of the students of Lee Wolf Academy fighting with each other, and Jules realized the trick they had used to surround them and pretend that they were fighting. Ayato wonders if it was the Lee Wolf students who were after her in the first place, but she tells him that they were hired by someone who would do anything for money and decides to beat them up and interrogate them to find out who is after her. After she kicked everyone's asses alone without much effort, she grabbed one of them and asked him who was after her, and he told her that some guy had promised to pay him a lot of money for assaulting them. She asked him to describe the appearance of the unknown person who instigated them, and then he pointed out that he was hiding behind a tree. The unknown unknown person ran away, so they decided to follow him into the forest, and after chasing him, they found themselves surrounded by a group of criminals who were trying to get Julius in various ways. Without realizing it, Ayato received some arrows that caused his clothes to tear, and when he tried to throw his sword at one of them to hit him, they fled, so Julius decided to turn back and wait for the guards to come to investigate. At night, Ayato entered Julius' room through the window as she asked him before they turned back, and when she saw him, she asked him to undress in front of her. He felt embarrassed by her request, and when she realized what he was thinking, she told him that she wanted to repair his damaged clothes and had nothing to do with his deviant thoughts. Ayato took off his robe and Julius started sewing it with her average skill. While she was repairing it, Ayato noticed a photo of her with a number of children when she was young, and when he grabbed the photo and asked her if these were her friends she was talking about, she felt embarrassed and immediately took the photo from him, put it back, and told him angrily that they were her friends. She then told him that as a child she was a bit like a boy, sneaking out of the palace at night. One day she got lost and ended up in a slum, and some bullies trapped her in an alley until these kids showed up and helped her. After returning to the palace, she realized that they were children living in an orphanage, so she decided to become their friend and sneak out every now and then to spend time with them, hiding the fact that she was a princess from them. Then she added that the reason she joined the academy and wanted to win the Vista tournament was to get money to help keep the orphanage open for her friends. Ayato was surprised that there was no other way for her to get money even though she was a princess. She tells him that in her kingdom, she can't secure approval for a project without getting revenue from it, and although she thinks Asterisk is despicable for forcing students to fight each other and making the world a place filled with greed, it is the city that everyone wants, and vows to get what she wants for her own benefit. After she finishes knitting his sweater, she asks him to leave and consider them even. Before he leaves, she tells him that her handkerchief is basically embroidered by all her friends, and she considers it her treasure, and Ayato realizes how important it is to her. The next day, he entered the classroom and found Julius reading a paper very carefully. In the middle of the day, she suddenly decided to leave. Ayato sat thinking about her strange behavior until Claudia interrupted his thoughts, and when Aishiru told her what happened, she said she had a bad feeling about it. It occurred to Ayato that she had gone alone to investigate the unknown person after her, and he wondered if she still didn't trust him for not telling him anything. Claudia told him that on the contrary, she always protects the things that are special to her, and she often considers him to be one of those things. Ayato remembers that he and his sister want to protect each other and decides to follow her. Claudia gives him the sword Cerberista just in case, and Ayato decides that what he must do from now on is to use his power to protect Julius. Julius goes to an abandoned place full of broken and under construction buildings and wanders around until she feels that part of the roof will fall on her, so she uses her power to turn it into ashes before it reaches her and realizes that the person behind her is trying to surprise her and asks him to show himself, which turns out to be Silas Norman, one of Lester's friends. Silas admires her resourcefulness in knowing it was him. She tells him it was because of his slip of the tongue that day when he tried to stop Lester from challenging her. He realizes that Ayato deliberately made Lester angry at the time and thinks he might want to target him for being in the way. Feeling angry at his intention to hurt Ayato, he offered her a deal. He would leave her alone in exchange for withdrawing from this year's Vista tournament, so she pulled out her sword and decided to teach him a harsh lesson for messing with her. Lester interrupted their conversation after Silas invited him, claiming that Julius had agreed to fight him, but he understood the truth when he listened to their conversation, and Julius told him that one of the academies had sent him to attack the candidates for this year's championship. Lester realized he was trying to sell out her friends. Silas told him that everyone in Asterisk is an enemy in one way or another, as they are after the tournament to fulfill their dreams and make money. When Lester asked him why he called him, he told him that he was going to frame him by fighting her to death. Lester rushes at him and starts to attack, but one of Silas' henchmen appears out of nowhere and blocks him, then the others appear, and when they reveal themselves, Lester thinks they are robots, while Julius realizes that his ability is to control the robots and take complete control of them. Lester made a loud explosion with a swing of his axe, but soon more of them appeared and started shooting at him. On the other side, Julius found herself surrounded by many of them, and Silas told her to be obedient to them. Lester summoned the strength to fight the robot in front of him, but Silas quickly summoned all the robots he had, and Lester and Julius ended up surrounded by 128 robots. Julius used all her strength to burn as many of them as she could at once, and then continued to attack and finish them off, but they were too many for her to fight, and one of the robots managed to shoot her in the leg and the others tied her up. Julius realized that Silas had been manipulated by the Alakan Academy, as it is the only one capable of producing so many robots. He admired her sharp intelligence and told her that he could not leave her alive after she found out about him. One of the robots took Lester's axe to finish her off, but before the axe reached her, Ayato saved her in time and cut the robots in half. She tells him that this is her own issue and he has nothing to do with it, and when she asks him why he decided to go to the trouble of saving her, he tells her that he finally found the answer to his question when he first met her and decided to lend her his power and protect her since there was no one else to take care of it. Julius is embarrassed for a moment before Silas Silas interrupts and asks Ayato what he wants to do in front of 100 of his robots. The robots then gather in front of them and start shooting at them all at once. Ayato decides to use his invisible power and combine it with his sword abilities to finish off the robots, and Silas is shocked to find that he was able to defeat all of his robots without leaving one intact. He decides to use everything he has and gathers more robots in front of him and begins to clash with them. He continues to fight them while carrying Julius with one arm. After a while, he realizes that Silas can only move 6 of the robots independently, while the rest of them execute a slower pattern of movements. Silas is furious that he was so easily exposed and vows to destroy him, but Ayato manages to crush his robot army effortlessly, and finding himself on the verge of defeat, he decides to play his trump card. Ayato and Julius are surprised when a giant robot appears in front of them from the pile of debris. Ayato unleashes his power and cuts off the robot's limbs and turns it into scrap in a flash. When he sees it fleeing, he asks Julius to wait here to catch up, but she decides to use her power to help him catch up with Silas. Ayato was able to get him after he split the robot lying on top of him in half and sent it flying through the air like a scattering of paper until he landed in an alley and found Claudia waiting for him while Ayato watched the sunset with Julius. Suddenly, Ayato felt the power of the sword binding him with mysterious shackles, and soon he began to lose consciousness. Then he had an old memory of his sister, Haruka, who sealed his monstrous powers with circular shackles to protect him as she had promised, and then said goodbye to him before she left forever. In the night, Ayato regained consciousness, and the first thing he looked at was Julius' face and found himself lying on her legs. She told him that Claudia and the others were on their way. When she asked him about the source of the powers that caused him to lose consciousness, he told her that his sister had put them inside him to suppress his powers, but this was the first time he could use his full power for more than 5 minutes. She wondered why she did it, and he wished he could ask her himself, but she lost 5 years ago. He then changed the subject and asked Julius if she had decided who would be her partner in the Vista tournament. She told him that his strength would affect him over the course of the tournament and that he would end up fainting after each time he used his full powers. He said that he had already decided what to do and expressed his desire to be by her side at all times. In the meantime, Claudia took care of Silas and tore his body apart with her swords until he fell to the ground. A mysterious person nearby wondered if she intended to use the incident to appear diplomatic. Claudia told him that she would leave the choice to his group known as the Shadow Stars and asked him to question him when he regained consciousness, and it turns out that this mysterious person is a member of the Shadow Stars, Aishiru. The next day, Claudia goes to meet with all the student presidents of the 6 academies and notices that one of the presidents is absent from the meeting because she is busy with other business, and Dirk, the student president of Lee Wolf Academy, expresses his displeasure with her behavior and that her presence or absence won't make a difference. Ernest, the student president of Gadworth Academy, told him not to speak ill of the other academies, and when he continued to do so, Dirk wondered if he wanted to fight him now instead of having a meeting. Singlu, Jilun's student leader, found that they were not getting along with each other as usual and told him to stop their behavior or she would join in and cause chaos, and Ernest sat down in his place. Dirk asked if the Seduken and Alakin academies had agreed to develop a new type of weapon, and when Claudia confirmed the news, he told her that secret agreements between the academies were forbidden by the Stella Charter. Singlu recalled that Sedoken Academy had used her Shadow Stars that day when they arrested Silas, so Claudia changed the subject, and then Alakan's student leader, Shuma, wanted to suggest that they discuss AI processing in Asterisk. Meanwhile, Ayato was running towards the academy when he bumped into a silver-haired girl. He felt embarrassed and apologized to her for his impulsiveness, but she was ashamed that she was the one who should apologize. After removing it, someone called her Kirin, and she had to leave quickly because she was late. Ayato then remembered that he was late for his training with Julius, so he went to the training ground and started exchanging attacks with her and managed to beat her using his full strength. Julius was disappointed because she thought she might be able to beat him today. When she asked about his body condition, Ayato told her that he was fine because he only used his full strength for 3 minutes. She told him that he would be able to manage if he faced someone at a high level like Ernest or Xinglu, even though they are too old to participate in the Vista tournament. He told her that he had heard about another strong competitor who had placed second in the Linpils festival, and she realized that he meant Sylvia from Jilun Academy. She thought for a while and then told him that they had an advantage in their favor. His skills were not well known and he could fight with his sword without sealing it. Thinking that he should use his full strength in every fight to make the sword recognize him as his own user, she tells him not to get involved in any duels until the tournament. Saya and Lester join them, and Saya expresses her displeasure that she spends more time with Ayato than she does. Ayato saw that they were going to start fighting among themselves and turned his attention to Lester, who, confused, said that he had done him a favor by saving him when he fought Silas and indirectly thanked him. Then Claudia joined them along with Camelia and Ernesta, who seemed excited to enter the academy's training ground. Ayato marveled at her enthusiasm, and Claudia told him that she had come with a delegation from Alakin Academy because they were about to begin a joint project to develop a new type of weapon. Jules was furious and realized that this cooperation was in exchange for not pressing charges against Alicante for Silas. Ernesta replied that she was curious to see the swordsman who cut up all her robots with his super skills, and then she approached Ayato far enough away that Jules pointed her sword at her and told her to stay away from him. Ernesta ignored her and stared at him intently, then told him that she liked him and whispered to him that things wouldn't go well next time, and to everyone's surprise, she gave him a kiss on the cheek, successfully injuring Jules and Saya. Camellia apologized to everyone for her outburst and told them that this was the real Ernesta. When she noticed Saya's weapon, she approached her and admired its design, telling her that it was still an impractical weapon. Then she added that the weapon was rejected 10 years ago because it was considered a half-baked technology, and Saya would have to spread the meteo arts non-stop to increase the production of her weapon through mana. Saya told her that she was right, but she wouldn't let her leave after insulting her father's weapon, and she realized that she was Dr. Stash's daughter. When Saya asked her to retract what she said about his weapon, she refused, telling her that her father had already been expelled from the Alicante Academy and the entire city of Vervias, and that she could not recognize his corrupt concepts as part of Alicante. Claudia wanted to lighten the mood a bit and suggested that they get back to the point, which is the cooperation between the two academies, but Saya still insisted on taking back her words, so Ernesta told her that she would have to force her because Camellia is the stubborn type. Saya decides to participate in the tournament in any way she can and tells Ayato that she wants to team up with him. Jules is furious and tells her that he is her partner, and they continue to fight over who will be his partner in the tournament. In the evening, Ernesta admires what Camellia did to Saya and how she made her so angry that she wanted to duel her. She tells her that she didn't mean to make her angry, she was just giving her opinion on something. When asked what she thought about Saya's father, Ernesta told her that she needed to learn more about him and that all she could think about was Ayato, and vowed that she would do anything to stop him. The next day, Aishiru began to explain to Ayato the nature of the work of those inside the Alicante Academy, and that they are divided into a team of swordsmen and swordswomen who fight in festivals, and a team of researchers who work on developing weapons, and that the rank of researchers is the most influential. On their way, Ayato noticed that there was something wrong with Kirin and the stern man accompanying her, and found that he was beating her for some reason, so he rushed towards them and grabbed his hand before it reached her face and prevented him from hitting the girl, telling him that he was scolding her as her uncle. He then introduced himself as Koichiro and asked him to step aside and not interfere in family matters again, but he refused. Koichiro was curious about him, and when Ayato told him his name, he checked his record and was intrigued that he was using Sir Varista's sword. He asks him what he should do if he disagrees with the way he settles things. He asks him to promise not to use violence against Kirin again. Koichiro challenges him to a duel and tells him that if he wins, he will comply with his request. Ayato was surprised to see him turn to Kirin and tell him that she would be his opponent in the duel before he walked away. She looked at him and was forced to declare her challenge to him in public, and when she found him reluctant, she begged him to accept her duel so that they could settle the matter. Ayato found that he had no choice but to duel her and break the bonds of his power and summoned his sword. Kirin then attacked him and realized how strong he was and how quickly he was able to block her. Meanwhile, Jules appeared from the crowd of students and was furious when she saw what was happening, as she had already told Ayato not to get involved in any confrontations, and at the same time noticed that he was under high pressure from his opponent. Aishiru tells her that he is facing the famous Kirin with the light speed blade, and she is surprised to find that he has noticed that Ayato is not using his full power on the sword yet and is able to analyze the pattern of attack and defense in duels. Ayato and Kirin continued to exchange attacks until he began to feel his power running out as more than 3 minutes had passed, while Kirin felt that he was afraid or hesitant about something despite his unbridled power, and while they were fighting, Ayato was surprised that the fight was declared over and Kirin won over him since they fought in a place other than the training ground. Kirin apologizes to him for what happened before leaving with her uncle. Jules approaches him and tells him that they must leave the place immediately, and Ayato is surprised when she tells him that Kirin is ranked first in the Academy's student rankings. After Kirin left with her uncle Koichiro, he told her that the fight had taken longer than expected and began to blame her, then called her all she has is the art of fencing and that she is worthless without this skill, and told her that he can turn her into a student whose name is immortalized in the history of Saidokan Academy by carrying out his perfect plan. Ayato, on the other hand, was taking a break for using his strength too much and realized that Jules was angry that he fought without her permission, but she told him that he did the right thing in stopping her uncle from using her as a tool, and that she would have felt bad for him if he had ignored it, but she was angry that he lost to Kirin. She then added that she expected him to have a chance of beating her no matter how hard the fight was. At the same time, she recognized Kirin's impressive strength at only 13 years old, and that she is one of the top 3 she can't beat at her current level, along with him and Claudia. Ayato is surprised that Claudia is ranked second in the academy, and Jules tells him that she is known as the Lady of the Thousand Eyes and has the ability to see the future through her ability and has been undefeated since joining the academy. She then added that what makes Kirin different different from them is that she is not an Org Lux or Striga user, but has an extraordinary ability to hold the number 1 spot with just a Japanese sword for 3 months, and decided that they should reconsider their plan for the Vista tournament. Ayato then went to get a new logo after his was destroyed, and was surprised to find Claudia lounging by the pool. She told him it was the student council break room and gave him the new logo, and said she didn't expect him to fight against Kirin. He told her that he had to do it because of her uncle, and found that Claudia knows a lot about him, telling him that Koichiro is basically an employee of the Academy's own company and has a lot of power because of his position, and aspires to a position on the executive board. So he puts everything on Kirin's shoulders. Ayato realizes that she is forced to fight because of him, and Claudia guesses that she may have her own goal like the rest of the students, and that Koichiro will have a hard time getting the position he wants because he is pursuing his own interests. Ayato is surprised that she knows so much inside the academy, and she tells him that it is because her mother is one of the employees of the company. After that, he sat thinking about her words on his way home until he ran into his classmates at the academy, and Aishiru told him that someone wanted to see him. Kirin was with them and thanked him for protecting her from her uncle, even though she was a stranger. He tells her that he wasn't able to save her in the end. Then he hears voices outside the room, and when he opens the door, his classmates rush in, led by Aishiru, who likes to gather information by any means necessary. After that, he accompanies her on the way home and notices her excessive nervousness. She says that she has never hung out with someone who is not from her family. He realizes that her family's training style is strict, and when she questions his knowledge of her family's style, he tells her that he heard about it when he was young during training. Kirin remembered his movements during their fight and realized that his family's style seemed old and distinctive. She wished that their fight had lasted longer so that she could learn more about his strategies, and she realized that she had talked too much and told him that it was because she only knows Kenjutsu and has no other talents. Ayato was curious and asked her why she was fighting, and she replied that she was fighting to save her father and that her uncle had shown her the fastest and most convenient way to fulfill her dream, and she was grateful to him. So he wondered if she was grateful to him even though he was using her as a tool for promotion in his position. Kirin then asks him what kind of training he usually trains, since she has been training alone since she joined the academy and sometimes suspects that her training method is wrong. Ayato offers her to participate with his class in their training sessions, and she is excited about it, but then she remembers that she should not act in her own interest and should keep a distance between herself and others. He suggested that she join him in his training tomorrow morning and that they would be alone and it wouldn't be an issue, so she decided to take him up on his offer, and at night he said goodbye to her after she got home. As soon as she left, Saya appeared out of nowhere and climbed on his back, then grabbed his head in a submission move and started questioning him, but he couldn't speak because she was choking him, so she moved away from him, and he asked her what she was doing around, and she told him that she was looking for him to ask him about becoming her partner in the tournament. Ayato apologizes to her and tells her that he is currently teaming up with Julius. When she asks him about Kirin, he tells her that she is the top-ranked student at the academy, and she realizes that she is the girl he noticed yesterday. Ayato tells her that they have a lot in common, as she joined the academy to help her father like her. A few days later, Ayato was in the food court and met Julius, who asked him to tell her what he had found out about Kirin. In her excitement, she didn't realize that she had pressed the ordering machine and ended up being forced to eat a spicy curry. Ayato then told her that he and Kirin had been practicing early in the morning and realized that the reason she was asking was because she was worried he would expose his skills in front of her. She had to start eating her spicy curry, and when he found her struggling, he suggested that they swap dishes. Julius refused because she felt responsible for what she had ordered. He told her that they should share with each other to get along as a team. She thought he was right and exchanged her plate with him, but as soon as he took the first spoonful, he couldn't stand the heat. Meanwhile, Camellia went to wake Ernesta up and told her to check the situation on her devices. It turns out that she is constantly monitoring Ayato and Kirin, and asked her if she is sure that the plan will work since she is an adventurous person and likes to take a lot of risks. Ayato and Kirin were practicing together in a foggy environment, and Ayato jokingly suggested that they hold hands so they wouldn't get lost in the fog, but he was surprised to find her holding his hand. Suddenly they felt that someone was watching them from afar, then they found a fence that prevented them from crossing to the other side, and soon strange animals appeared from the grass in large numbers, and they found themselves surrounded. So Ayato took out his sword and managed to cut off the arm of one of them, but he was surprised by his ability to regenerate it again. Then two of them rushed at him at once, and he used his strength to fight them, but every time he thought he had gotten rid of them, they regenerated again without taking any damage. Kirin had an idea, and she tore one of the monsters to pieces until she found a core inside, and when she broke it, the monster was destroyed. Ayato approaches her and realizes that the core is artificial as soon as he grabs it, and that it is the work of Alicante. Then the rest of the monsters start attacking them with continuous fireballs, causing the ground to collapse under Ayato, and he almost falls if Kirin doesn't catch him in time. But she can't hold on for long, and they end up falling into the abyss together. Ernesta is fed up with the quick ending and decides to start the next phase of the plan after they succeed in trapping Ayato and Kirin Kirin in a deep lake, and soon a huge dragon appears in front of them. He had no choice but to use his full strength to get rid of it and used his sword to block its attack. When Kirin felt that he was having trouble blocking the dragon because of her, she asked him to leave her, and even though she couldn't swim, she was fed up with always causing trouble for others. He patted her on the head and asked her to trust him because he knew she would have wiped out such an enemy under equal circumstances. Then he made a ledge for her to stand on and started attacking the dragon. When he asked her if she could locate its core, she told him that it was moving fast inside the dragon. He decided to find it himself. He channeled his full strength into his sword to increase his strength and size, then jumped towards it and managed to split it in half and break its core with one blow, but soon he lost consciousness. After a while, he regained consciousness and told her everything about his strength. She was curious to ask him why he went to such lengths to fight, and he told her that someone wanted to help him, and she realized that he meant Julius, and suddenly they found a bright light shining on them after the construction workers and engineers arrived to save them. The next day, Kirin meets her uncle, and when he tells her that he was worried about her yesterday, she asks him if he's worried about her as his niece or just as a tool to be used, and is disappointed when he tells her that all he needs from her is her strength and orders her to cut ties with Ayato so he doesn't get her into more trouble. Kirin refused his order and told him that he had taught her valuable things recently and that she still had a lot to learn from him. He told her that she only needed to do what he told her to do. When she continued to oppose him, he slapped her and was surprised that she was still staring at him boldly. He told her that he was the reason she was number one, and without him, she wouldn't have a chance to win the Vista Championship and save her father. She told him that she couldn't save him the way he wanted her to, and when he was about to hit her again, she grabbed his hand and told him that she decided to fight in her own way so that she wouldn't regret it one day. She then went to the training ground and asked Ayato to duel her to help her take her first step as a true swordsman. He realized that she was finally free from her uncle's authority and decided to face her in an honorable duel, vowing not to lose this time so as not to anger Julius. Kirin was surprised that he decided not to use Fiorista's belt this time in order to match her speed. Julius was worried about Ayato, but Saya told her that he had faced much stronger opponents, and she was surprised when he told her that he had faced his older sister in the past. Kirin attacked with her super speed, but he was able to keep up with her, and when he saw that she was about to use her family's technique, he decided to use his full strength to stop her, and when she rushed towards him to make an all-out attack on him, he turned his weapon into a spear using his family's technique. They continue to fight, but she soon finds that he has replaced the spear with small daggers. After a while, she manages to force him to drop the daggers and thinks she has won, before Ayato uses his wrestling technique and impersonates John Cena, knocking her down with a knockout move. Kirin realized that his use of the weapon change technique was just a bait and admitted defeat. Ayato then went to the locker room and sat down to catch his breath with Julius and Saya. Then Claudia joined them with Kirin, who was embarrassed but summoned the courage to ask him to include her in his training course. Julius is surprised when she mentions that he offered it to her in the past and she should have refused. He tells her that he sees her as useful to them if she joins them. Saya doesn't mind, so Julius picks a fight with her and they find Koichiro outside wanting to talk to Kirin. She asks him to let him in, and the first thing he does is scold her for fighting without his permission and ends up getting beaten pathetically. He thinks she realizes she needs his help, but is surprised when she tells him she's decided to fight her own way from now on. He's about to hit her again, but Ayato grabs his hand and tells him not to interfere in her affairs anymore. He threatens that if she doesn't comply, he'll expose her father to everyone. Claudia intervenes and tells him that Kirin is here as a student at the academy and can't tolerate him trying to use her for his own personal gain. Koichiro found himself in a bind and had to give up and leave quietly. Kirin told him that she was still grateful for everything he had done for her because without him, she wouldn't have been able to come to Asterisk and meet Ayato and his friends. And after he left, Ayato patted her on the head and welcomed her as a member of his training course. Meanwhile, Ernesta learns more about Ayato through his confrontation with her dragon and decides it's time to move forward with her master plan to build a giant robot to match his strength and skills without having to go to the trouble of fighting him. Days later, Ayato and his companions continued to train hard and Kirin teamed up with Saya, but after they finished their training, Saya was frustrated by her failure to keep up with the movements of the training models and had to rely on Kirin to help her. After that, Ayato and his friends sat in the food court eating lunch and were surprised by one of his classmates asking for an autograph, which made Julius jealous and called him a woman magnet, but Aishiru told her that he had gained popularity due to his first place ranking after he managed to beat Kirin. Ayato was frustrated when he saw the girl auctioning off his online signature, but Aishiru told him that it was a common way for students to make money, and Kirin and Saya told him that he had real female fans like him. Ayato admires their decision to form an alliance to participate in the Vista tournament, and Saya tells him that she would do anything to confront Camille Orfilia and force her to retract what she said about her father, so he tells them that they have to work hard to keep their commitment to each other. So Saya decides to skip tomorrow's practice with Kirin to socialize with each other more. The next day they went to a park and thought about what they should do to help them get along. Saya apologized for putting her in this situation since she had never socialized before, and Kirin told her that she was an introvert herself and didn't socialize either. Saya thought they could use their day off to do something to bond and suggested they go shopping together since she has trouble getting directions and memorizing addresses. On their way to the mall, I asked Saya what she wanted to buy, and she said she wanted to buy a gift for her father's birthday. So Kirin started suggesting what to buy for him, but Saya rejected her suggestions because she didn't know much about her father. Kirin was curious and asked her what he was like. Saya told her that he was just a mad scientist and that he used to give her a new gun every Christmas. She thought they should go somewhere else to find a suitable gift, but to get there, they had to walk down an alley full of homeless people and criminals. Kirin was nervous about being in such a place, but Saya went in and found a gun that matched her father's tastes. The shopkeeper was impressed by her knowledge of the gun and told her that it was now a piece of junk, but Saya insisted on buying it nonetheless. Kirin wonders why she chose to buy a gun as a gift. Saya tells her that he has a special generator similar to the one her father researches, and then tells her it's her turn to think about what she wants to do. Kirin is confused until she gets an idea and asks her to do her a favor. Saya then went to the pool to teach Kirin to swim as she had asked her to, and Saya was puzzled that Kirin had asked her to teach her instead of Ayato, telling her that she wanted him to see her more appropriately and would have been embarrassed if he had taught her himself. Saya decided to go get them drinks and told her to practice alone until she returned. While swimming up the buoy, she couldn't avoid the girl sitting in the middle of the water in front of her and bumped into her, sending them both into the water. The blonde girl was furious and thought that Kirin was trying to pick a fight with her despite her repeated apologies and decided to fight her now, but soon realized that she was talking to the #1 ranked Lightning Blade, and Kirin told her that she had been defeated and was off the list for the time being. The girl was surprised that she couldn't dodge her while she was swimming. The girl didn't believe it and thought she was joking. When she realized she was serious, she started making fun of her and told her to go to the corner of the pool and splash the water. Suddenly, she received a crushing soap throw from Saya that made her dive into the depths again, so she became furious and returned looking for who did it, and Saya told her not to insult her partner. And when the girl asked her about her identity and found that she did not have a rank in the classified list, she felt ashamed that a girl like her dared to stand in front of her. Saya told her that she saw everything that happened and that she should apologize to Kirin. Saya told her that she would have to fight her to force her to apologize and vowed that she would show her her true size as the 35th ranked Queenville Academy, and told her that her name was Violet. Saya accepts the challenge and the entire pool gathers around them, and Violet sarcastically tells her that she will be able to accept the loss after she beats her since non-academy duels are not recorded. Before Violet could summon any technology, she was surprised when Saya summoned an irrigation sniper and attacked her with a violent wave of water that sent her back into the pool and sealed the deal in one fell swoop. In the evening, she sat along with Kirin and advised her that she should be more courageous in such situations, and wondered how she didn't get angry despite being insulted so much, to which she replied that she was used to it because of her uncle's treatment of her. Saya looked her in the eye and told her that she had to be brave to maintain her dignity in front of everyone, and told her that she had some flaws in her personality, but this did not detract from her qualities, and Kirin felt grateful to her for caring about her so much. Then it occurred to her to ask her why she chose her as her partner in the tournament, and Saya replied that there were several reasons related to capabilities that made her the most suitable choice for her, but the most important reason was that she had a sword similar to Ayato's, so she felt that things would go well with them, and as partners, she decided to lift the assignment and call each other by their first names. The next day, Ayato and Julius have greatly improved their performance in training and have surpassed them in training stats and have taken first place, so Ayato decides not to underestimate them and that he and Julius will work on improving themselves to become their equal. One day, Dirk and Corona go to the prison to meet one of the criminals, Irene, and he shows her Ayato's photo and asks her to participate in the Vista tournament and destroy him without having to win the tournament. Irene asked him why he was targeting him, and he told her that his Orglux weapon would be a nuisance in the future, so she realized that he was strong enough to use a criminal to get rid of him, and she wanted to make sure that he did not harm her younger sister, and he told her that he always keeps his promises. Then she decided to accept the mission so that she would not be locked up in prison for long, and wanted to start with a light meal to revitalize her sense of crime again. The next day, the Vista tournament began, and the chairman of the tournament committee, Madiath, gave his speech, and Ayato was surprised that the chairman of the tournament was a young man like him, so Julius told him that he had won the tournament when he was a student, which qualifies him for the position of chairman of the tournament now. When Ayato looked at him, he was surprised to find Madiath staring at him, but at first glance he thought he was imagining, as he continued his speech and began to explain the changes to the tournament rules while Saya fell asleep during the speech, then woke up when he said that this year's substitutes will be allowed to enter and participate in the fights to ensure equality between academies in the future. Julius suggested to Ayato that they go for a snack before their match, so he went to look for Saya and Kirin, and when he found Lester and Randy on the way, he invited them to join them for lunch, but Lester angrily replied that he had no intention of becoming his friend. He told him that he just wanted to thank him for lending him his weapon on the day of his fight against Kirin, but he didn't care about that, and before he left, he told him that his team is the team he wants to fight the most, and after he left, he was surprised by Saya hugging him after she finally found him. Then Kirin approached him carrying a gift and told him that she and Saya had prepared a lunch for him and Julius to encourage them, so he decided to share lunch in the waiting room, and after they finished lunch, they watched the fights that will be held before them in the tournament. Then they listened to the rules of the tournament from the posters, including that the tournament will be held for 2 weeks and that the matches will be judged electronically with no real judges. After a while, it was time for Ayato and Julius, who headed to the ring to fight 2 students from the Galadorth Academy. At the start of the fight, Julius realizes that they will choose to fight in close quarters, so she decides to let Ayato take care of them alone since it's that easy. He summons his weapon and unleashes his full power, then rushes towards his opponents and manages to break their badges with one blow, sealing the fight in his favor amidst everyone's amazement. Afterward, Julius realizes that they will gain an advantage if they can hide their teamwork for as long as possible and fight individually, and before appearing before the media, she tells Ayato to avoid answering their questions explicitly and not to talk about his power. When they returned to the waiting room, Aishiro came to cheer them on and told them that when he found it so easy, he decided to wait until the 3rd Alicante Academy fight. He said that he wanted to go to their room to write about them, but they kicked him out, so he decided to wait and meet them at the fight. After that, they sat down to watch the Alicante Academy fight and were surprised to learn that they decided to participate with Ernesta's robots. Meanwhile, Camellia was furious that Ernesta deliberately leaked information about their robots to the public, so Ernesta told her that they had already received a distinction thanks to the rule change this year, and there was no way for them to lose. She then added that all the information she leaked was as basic as the name of the robots, as she had created a male robot named ARD and a female robot named RMC. When the opponents got a little nervous, ARD told them that he wasn't trying to win, but to show his superior skills. Then he decided to give them 1 minute to show all their strength and attack him. At the start of the fight, they were surprised when his teammate RMC attacked him and scolded him for going easy on the opponents and told him that he needed to have his stupid head serviced. ARD justified that he wanted to show some competitiveness in front of the opponents, so she decided to comply with what he told them so as not to tarnish the honor of their lady Ernesta, and vowed that he would not start the attack for a minute. So the opponents accepted their offer and began to launch powerful attacks against them to destroy them in a minute. The opponents were surprised by the speed and strength of the robots in countering their attacks and did not manage to inflict even a little damage on them, and they found that they had half a minute left before the robots began to retaliate. So one of them realized that they would be destroyed if they began to attack and decided to use his maximum strength to ensure that at least one of them was destroyed, but to no avail. Time runs out for the robots and ARD pulls out his weapon and manages to crush his opponent along with RMC, winning their fight with little effort. Ayato and company realize how powerful Alicante's super robots are and that they will have a hard time if they face them. Saya then receives a call from her father to tell her about the fight. He says that the robots are using an excess of mana that humans can't handle, but the AI can. He then tells her that he sent her a new gun, but it hasn't arrived yet. She told him that she is already using one of his pistols and she will be fine, so he told her before hanging up that he will sit and wait to hear good news from her later. Then Saya decided to go to customs to inspect her father's new weapon before the start of the next fight. On the other side, Ernesta celebrated the victory of her robots in their first fight and put on a great show, so RMC knelt in front of her in respect, while ARD kept showing off his strength, so she blocked him to force him to kneel in front of their lady and told him that she will not tolerate anyone who disrespects Ernesta. ARD was curious to ask her about being useless against RMC even though they were equally powerful, and she replied in a feminist manner that he should submit to her innate strength, which made him feel frustrated, while Ernesta thought that she shouldn't tell him that she created RMC to suppress his true powers, which are far superior to hers. On the other side, Ayato and Julius were sprinting back to the tournament headquarters after a long time of training. On their way, they noticed a fight across the street, and when they entered the crowd, they found Irene kicking the ass of a group of 3 people alone, and when the 4th member approached, she crushed his neck with a single kick. After the fight was over, the spectators began to applaud her as if she had won a championship fight. She shouted to them that this wasn't a show, but a reckoning from the past. Then she noticed Ayato, who had been assigned to get rid of him, in the crowd and approached him, and Julius stood in front of her, asking her what she wanted from her partner. Irene asked her to step aside for a while, but she refused because she didn't want to pick a fight with him on the street, and warned her that her barbaric behavior could disqualify her and lead to her expulsion from the city. Irene, infuriated by Julius's dictation, summoned her weapons in preparation to take them down at once. Just as she was about to attack, attack, her younger sister Priscilla appeared in the crowd. Irene had to hide her weapon away and reprimanded her for fighting without permission, then found Priscilla approaching them and apologized to Julius and Ayato on her behalf, then forced her to bow and apologize as well, and they left without making any more trouble. Julius checked the data that Claudia had already sent about them and confirmed that Priscilla is the sister of Irene, the top-ranked student at Lee Wolf Academy, and there's not much information about her, and she has no ranking in the ranking list. Ayato wonders if she's deliberately trying to piss her off, and she replies that she suspects there's a reason why Irene is targeting him after he asked her to step aside. Ayato wonders why someone like her would go after him since he's never met her before, and then they realize that Kirin and Saya's fight has just begun. The commentators were making fun of Saya's short stature and the fact that she looked more like a child than a high school student, which made the audience burst out laughing and infuriated her, and she was frustrated that Ayato didn't come to cheer her on. She then pulled out her weapon and asked Kirin which of her opponents she would like to fight individually, and when she found that she didn't mind fighting any of them, she decided to take on the eldest of them. As the fight began, the opponents attacked them using martial arts, but Kirin managed in a short time to destroy her opponent's badge. On the other side, Saya was struggling a bit with her opponent, who was using a short-range sword and attacking at close range. Saya continued to fight until the moment was right, and he was far enough away to allow her to shoot him and blow him up with her super pistol, and her team was declared the winner. 5 days later, the second round playoffs began, and Julius decided it was her turn to go it alone after letting Ayato handle things alone in the previous round, and found that she would be facing Yanan and Yosuga from Quenneville Academy. Julius summoned her sword, and when the fight started, the two girls attacked her, and she was able to block them easily, then began to exchange attacks with them using her flame power and managed to destroy Yosuga's badge with one blow, while Yanan continued to resist for a while. However, she was unable to withstand Julius' Miserata technique for long as she created a giant fireball on top of her, and after it fell on her, Julius and Ayato were declared the winners of the match. Afterward, they sat in the waiting room, and I asked Ayato what his plans were for the rest of the day, and he said that he wanted to go cheer on Saya and Kirin in their fight, but he wouldn't be able to make it in time. Julius gave him the lunch she had prepared and was happy that Ayato liked it and was surprised at her ability to cook. Then she was a little irritated, and when he asked, she indirectly told him that she wanted him to pat her on the head like he had done with Saya and Kirin. Ayato blushed and looked more like a girl than Julius, and when she patted her head, she felt a little embarrassed, then changed the subject and decided to watch the fight that was currently being played and found that it was Lester and Randy versus Irene and Priscilla. Irene was standing in front of them alone, while Lester and Randy kept a safe distance from her and kept moving in circles around her, with Lester thinking about gaining as much time as possible to make the fight longer. Randy turned his attention to Priscilla and lunged at her to distract Irene, but Irene, used to her opponents using this tactic against her, decided to go on the offensive and plunge her axe into the ring floor, immobilizing Randy, causing Lester to lunge right at her. Irene was able to take care of him easily. Then she approached Randy and used more of her power on him until he was completely unconscious. Then she returned to Lester to take care of him privately, which made him feel angry at her and used the power of his axe to launch a violent attack against her. Irene couldn't block his blow as she expected, and when she realized how strong he was, she decided not to let up and fight with all her might. Then she approached Priscilla and drank some of her blood to boost the power of her weapon and heal her wounds. That's when everyone discovered Priscilla's secret power to heal herself from her sister's bite and act as a booster, and Lester felt he had no chance against Irene's true power after realizing she was a vampire. She then used the power of gravity to prevent him from dodging her attack, which consisted of 3 super balls of magic, and managed to settle the matter effortlessly by forcing him to retreat amidst the cheering of the crowd and in front of Ayato, who realized that he was being targeted by a figure to be reckoned with. 2 weeks later, Ayato and Julius qualify for the finals of the tournament, and Claudia tells him that she is looking forward to watching his upcoming fights. Then he receives a call from Kirin to tell him that she lost Saya somewhere and can't find her, so he decides to go to help her find her. Ayato went to the commercial area to look for Saya, but on his way he met Priscilla running away from a group of bullies chasing her, so he had no choice but to help her, and after a while they managed to escape from them. He wondered how she ended up in trouble with these scum, and she told him that her sister had caused a mess in a casino a while ago, which made them target her. Realizing that he might get a bad impression of her, she told him that Irene had a good personality despite her aggression, and that she had called her to come to her rescue. Irene appeared out of nowhere after she finished her sentence, and thought that he was the one who had harassed her. Priscilla told her before she could do anything foolish that he had saved her. She thought that he might want to deceive her since he didn't have to help his enemies, and when he was about to use his sword to defend himself, Priscilla approached her and prevented her from picking a fight with him. Priscilla asks Irene to promise not to hurt Ayato, and Irene complies. Then Ayato receives a call from Kirin to tell him that she was able to find Saya. After he hangs up, Irene realizes that she thought the worst of him without proof and that he met her sister by chance. She tells him that she owes him now, then shows him the the announcement of the final match, and he is surprised that he will have to face her. In the evening, Irene storms into Dirk's headquarters in a rage and tells him that he broke their agreement after Priscilla was attacked under his protection. He tells her that there are people inside the academy who don't like to follow his orders. Finding him indifferent and describing her sister as a mere replenisher of her power and of no further use to her, she became enraged and attacked him, but only managed to get a small scratch on his face thanks to his protective barrier. He then tells her that he wouldn't let his cat organization followers interfere after Ayato beat them and helped her since they are supposed to show their form to the others. She tells him that she is now indebted to him and can't fight him in the final match, and asks him not to interfere in this matter and she will settle it in her own way. After she left, Dirk asked Corona to read the tarot, and when she used her power, she told him that she saw Irene and Priscilla winning their fight, and he realized that he had pretty much guaranteed the success of his plan and decided to contact the so-called Golden Seventh Eye. Meanwhile, Julius was furious that Ayato accepted Irene and Priscilla's dinner invitation to thank him and called him a hopeless person, but she had to accompany him to ensure his safety. When they arrived at their apartment, she wondered why they hadn't invited him to dinner at a restaurant. Priscilla greeted them, and when they entered, they saw Irene sitting at the dining room table, feeling upset. Priscilla brought out the food, and they all sat down to dinner together. Julius liked Priscilla's cooking, while Ayato liked their apartment. Irene told him it was cozy and close to the casino she goes to. Julius thought she went to the casino at night and told her she goes out at night to make money. Julius wondered that she was making money from the casino when she could make more if she won the Fiesta tournament. Irene told her that she had borrowed a large amount of money from Dirk several years ago and had to pay it back in installments by obeying his orders, which led to her being forced to participate in the tournament through a contract and cannot use the prize money to pay off her debts. Then they were surprised when she told them that she had received an order from Dirk to participate in the tournament to get rid of Ayato because his special weapon was causing him great inconvenience, and she knew that he had seen someone else who could use the same weapon, and the first person who came to Ayato's mind was Haruka. Irene tells them that she has paid her debt to them by telling them what they need to know. As they leave, Priscilla apologizes for the trouble Irene caused them. Ayato asks if she's not interested in tomorrow's fight, and she says that her sister is fighting for her, so she can't run away and leave her behind. She then expresses her concern about Irene's power, saying that lately she seems fierce and scary when she uses it. After they leave, they decide to focus on tomorrow's fight and fight to win. Ayato then called Claudia and asked her to come talk to her for a while. When he got to her room, he found her lying on her desk. As soon as he approached her, he was surprised when she attacked him, knocking him to the ground, and just as she was about to finish him off, she regained consciousness just in time. Then she apologized to him for what just happened, and when he asked her what it was, she asked him before answering his question to participate in the Vista Championship next year as a member of her team, and he told her that he doesn't mind as long as Julius will be with him, and she felt jealous but agreed to his request. She then tells him that what just happened was the curse of her weapon, that she had to experience her own death in order for her weapon to recognize her as its user, that she had died more than 1,200 times before, and each time she saw a different way, and that's why everyone fails to control this particular weapon. Ayato marveled at her ability to endure such a thing, and told him that she had a desire she wanted to fulfill by possessing this weapon, and refused to say what it was, so Ayato asked her what he had come for, which was her opinion of Irene's power and her weapon. She told him that the weapons of the Orglux have different personalities, just like humans, and there are those who have a good or bad personality, and his weapon has the best personality of all of them, even though he is a little perverted, and she sees that Irene's weapon sends a sense of danger wherever it is found. Then she added that often the Orglux weapons tend to interfere with their users and have the ability to change the personality and mindset of the user to suit them. Ayato then remembered what Priscilla said about her and decided to go home to get some rest before tomorrow's match. Irene remembered her past struggles with her sister and the difficulties she had to face to protect her after their mother died in a battle in their hometown, and that she needed strength to be able to protect her constantly, until she met Dirk, who gave her first weapon and told her that she would be using it from now on, and as soon as she touched it, she became a completely different person, the same person she aspired to become. Priscilla interrupted her thoughts to tell her that it was time for them to go out into the ring. She patted her on the head and told her that they would deal with it as usual since she wouldn't need to fight with all her strength, and Irene drank some of her blood to boost the power of the axe. On the other side, Ayato was feeling a little nervous before Julius interrupted his thoughts and told him it was time for their fight. Before they left the waiting room, he whispered to her that he wanted to try something. On their way to the ring, she told him that they had to win no matter who their opponent was because she wasn't willing to give up her wish. She then said that they would probably only have one chance to carry out his plan, and they agreed to take advantage of the right opportunities to ensure victory, and headed to the ring to the cheers of the crowd. Ayato summoned his sword and unleashed his full power, while Irene took a stance ready to start the fight. As soon as the whistle blew, Julius attacked with flames, followed by Ayato's attack from close range, but she was able to block them without taking any damage. Ayato and Irene continued to exchange close-range attacks, and Irene realized how how well Ayato and Julius were getting along with each other by combining their powers and decided not to let up. When she tried to use the gravity technique to immobilize Ayato, he moved away from her before she could reach his body. Julius took the opportunity to attack, but they were surprised that she had the ability to create a protective barrier to block flame attacks. Then she told them that this secret technology was created for Priscilla and is difficult to destroy. Then she approached her and drank a little blood, and Ayato felt that they were back to square one again. Julius told him she was ready to carry out his plan. After Irene finished boosting her strength, she approached them to continue the gravity attack, but they surrounded her from all sides and Julius tried to surprise her, which infuriated Irene. Ayato took the opportunity to approach her and try to do as much damage to her as he could. She felt she was in trouble, but she managed to fight them off and pushed Ayato away after realizing that he was after her weapon power. Then she decides to use her 10,000 times more power and tells them that she's not very good at controlling it. When she launches it at them, Ayato uses the blocking crow technique and manages to destroy all her magic balls with his sword and then rushes towards her, and she is surprised when Julius traps her in a circle of flames. Irene sarcastically said that she could see through her trap, but Julius quickly told her that it was just a bait and found the flame circle turning into a towering volcano that surrounded her from all sides and caused a huge explosion inside the arena that almost destroyed the arena barrier. After that, they thought they had it all figured out, but to their surprise, she was still standing thanks to her power, and when Priscilla approached her, she found that she had transformed into a monstrous form and became a different person than the sister she knew. And as Ayato tried to save the situation, she used gravity even more than before and immobilized everyone. Ayato realizes that Irene's weapon power has completely taken over and tries to move with all his might to get close to her so that she can hear him. He asks her to regain consciousness and not let her powers take over. When he gives her the choice between having the power and her sister, she regains consciousness for a while and leaves Priscilla, but soon her power takes over again and spreads throughout the entire ring. Suddenly, Ayato saw a flashback of his sister's last memories when she was using the sword and realized what he had to do. He gathered all his strength and rushed towards Irene, targeting her axe and forcing her to let go. Then using his family's special technique, he split the axe in half and managed to destroy the power inside him and free Irene from it. Ayato and Julius were declared the winners of this year's tournament. Ayato collapsed after losing his strength to catch his breath, and Julius rushed at him and tried to wake him up, but he lost consciousness while Dirk was watching what was happening on his screen. Then he realized that he could use his power for a while and decided to put the cats on standby for the future and decided to settle accounts with Alicant Academy. Meanwhile, everyone was watching what happened to Ayato after he collapsed in the middle of the ring and realized that his power has a time limit. In the evening, Priscilla regained consciousness in the hospital and found Irene next to her and told her that she had run out of mana due to drinking too much of her blood. And when she apologized to her contritely, she didn't care much about it and asked her about the outcome of the fight. She said in frustration that they had been defeated and Ayato had destroyed her weapon. Surprisingly, she wasn't reprimanded by the student council, but she won't be able to repay her debt after failing to beat Ayato. Priscilla told her that she wants to be strong to fight alongside her in the future and vowed that she will become stronger and Irene won't have to protect her anymore. Julius, on the other hand, was furious that everyone had discovered Ayato's secret because he had broken Irene's weapon and that he wouldn't be able to move until tomorrow, so he told her that he would figure it out and that he was still determined to fulfill his promise to always support her. Then he gets up and decides to summon the strength to face his seal. She approaches him and tells him that she will support him too and won't let him fight alone. Just as they are about to have a romantic moment, they are interrupted by the rest of the guys joining them to check on him, and he ends up surrounded by his girlfriends fighting over who will take care of him until he recovers. Singlu was in a forest watching the final fight between Ayato and Irene when she sensed a group of people coming towards her to attack her. So she used her power to detect them and kept dodging them so fast that no one could catch her, and she kept jumping between buildings until those who were after her became exhausted and fell down. So she asked them to come back soon to try it again. They turned out to be her students, whom she trains in her own temple. When one of her students, Hu Feng, asked what she was watching while the others were training, she told her that she was watching the final match of the Vista tournament and admired Ayato's abilities and wished she could take him on. On the way, Singlu met Shenhua and Shenyan, who told her that they were headed to face Song and Leo in the 6th round of the tournament and might go a little too far because they didn't get along with them. Singlu doesn't mind and tells them that her goal is to make them stronger at all costs, while at the same time she'll be watching Ayato's match tomorrow and hopes he can win to make it even more exciting for her. The next day, Julius is furious that the players are getting more detailed information about them. Rumors are spreading everywhere, and everyone knows that Ayato is using his power for a limited time that he can't exceed. She then then told him that Lee Wolf Academy was the source of all the news about his power, and when she asked him about the condition of his body, he told her that he still felt some minor pain, but he could still fight at least. Julius wanted to make sure of two things. She asked if he can defend well when his power is sealed. He told her that he can, using experience and anticipating his opponent's moves. When she asked if he can use the way he summons his power, he replied that he can do it at least once. She told him that their opponents today were students from Geelong Academy who had a lot of experience in close combat but could easily beat them if he was at full strength. She told him that they would have a hard time overcoming them, and then she came up with a plan and approached him to tell him about it in secret. The semi-finalists were then announced: Camelia and Ernesta, the Geelong Academy twins, Elliot and Doroteo from Galadorth, and Saya and Kirin. Ayato and Julius then headed to the ring to face Song and Leo from Geelong Academy. One of them told him that whether the rumors about him are true or not, they do not intend to go easy on him and asked him not to take it personally because they would rather fight him when he is at full strength. Julius warned him that they might be planning to test whether or not he was able to fight at full strength, and they agreed on a code so that he could use his power when she engraved it again during the fight. At the start of the fight, Geelong's team attacked them, and when the rumors were confirmed, they focused their attacks on Ayato, ignoring Julius, and he couldn't keep up with their speed and ended up trapped in the center of the ring. That's when he noticed the mark that Julius had carved and then found her using one of her flame techniques to create a fire barrier between the two teams fighting individually. Song wondered if Ayato thought he had a chance against him in a one-on-one fight. He tells him that it will be difficult, but that he doesn't intend to give up at the same time. The two teams begin to clash, and Julius is amazed at Leo's fighting skills despite being ranked 23rd in his academy. Leo realizes that she is using her strength to maintain the firewall and tells her that she could have turned this fight into a one-on-one fight without using any complicated tricks, and she thinks that she has no other choice as this is the only way to ensure victory. Ayato, on the other hand, was having a hard time keeping up with Song's strength, admiring his ability to withstand all his blows so far and focus on defense, realizing that if he was fighting at full strength, the roles would have been reversed. Ayato feels he can't take it anymore, while Song decides to settle it with his next strike out of respect. On the other side, Leo warns Julius that she needs to end it quickly before Song crushes Ayato. She tells him that they won't even be able to beat him in his current state, as he would catch them unaware of his movements. She decides to finish him off so she can go to Ayato's aid, and when he attacks, he manages to hit her with a powerful blow with his staff. On the other hand, Song said that his fist would destroy everything in front of her, even if he managed to block her, and advised him to try to dodge her instead. As he approached, Julius used a fireball and detonated it over the wall, and Ayato realized that it was her signal to execute the plan and use part of his strength. Then Song and Leo were surprised when the wall split in half and Ayato and Julius switched roles and managed to defeat Song and Leo at the same time and destroy their badges. After announcing their victory, they were relieved and sat down to catch their breath for a while. On their way to the waiting room, Julius felt that they had done a great job of winning at this level and was assured that Ayato would be able to fight at full strength in the next fight if he had a full day's rest. They met Song and Leo on their way and were surprised that they had come to congratulate them. Song told them that their plan wouldn't have worked if they didn't trust each other completely, shook their hands, and warned them that such a plan wouldn't work against their next opponent. Julius is skeptical for a moment and tells him that their next opponent is their classmates at the academy, which makes her unable to trust them. Song tells her that going to the same academy doesn't make them friends and that they don't get along well with the twins and feel more familiar with them than they do with them. When she asks him why her plan failed against them, he tells her that when it comes to surprises and surprise attacks, the twins' exceptional talent shows, and they will gain the advantage against them in any way as their fighting style is different from any other team in the tournament, as they despise their opponents and don't put themselves in danger in front of them. Their conversation is interrupted by the appearance of the twins from the back, mocking Song and Leo for talking badly about them despite being beaten so badly. The twins then introduce themselves to Ayato and Julius and tell them that they owe them an apology for their teammates' poor fighting in front of them. When Ayato noticed that they were deliberately provoking Song and Leo, he told them that their fight against him was not a poor one, and the twins vowed to show them a world that their older classmates could not, the starry depths of Senjutsu. After returning to the room, Julius finds that they still have 3 more fights to win the championship, and she is curious to ask Ayato what he intends to ask for when they win. Then she remembers his sister, Haruka, and he tells her that he feels she has her reasons for leaving home and does not intend to go out of his way to look for her, and Julius tells him that at least he will be able to understand the seal of his powers if he finds her. They are then interrupted by a call from Saya and Kirin saying that they have come to see them and congratulate them on winning their last fight and that they have a guest to see Julius. When they open the door, Julius is surprised to find that the guest is a girl named Flora whom she already knows. Julius is happy that Flora is coming to visit her during the tournament, but she wonders why she didn't send her a message before she came. She tells her that her brother promised to give her tickets to the tournament in exchange for not revealing anything to her. When Ayato noticed that she was was wearing a maid's uniform. Jules told him that Flora works as a maid in her family's mansion, but is still in training, and when she sat with everyone for a while and talked about the tournament, Flora was surprised that Jules was fighting for an orphanage. Ayato was curious about what Jules is like at the mansion, and she told him that her personality is the same as it is now, as she is always kind, warm-hearted, and has a great personality. Jules was surprised when they noticed a photo of Jules washing her hair in the shower, so she deleted the photos and asked Ayato worriedly if he saw anything, then scolded Flora for not erasing the photo beforehand, saying that this was one of her most important memories with her and she couldn't let it go. Ayato realized that she loved Jules very much, and Flora told him that she aspired to join the academy as a student one day to follow in her footsteps and contribute to the orphanage. When Jules told her that she was still a child and shouldn't think about it right now, she said that she heard that the student council president at Jaelong Academy was younger than her. Jules told her that she would need at least 2 years to be old enough to join the academy, and then she would have fulfilled all her wishes and fulfilled her promise to save the orphanage and change the city for the better, so she intends to win all the upcoming tournaments. Saya interrupts her and tells her that her luck has run out this year as she intends to win this year's tournament in order to reach her goal, and Kirin vows that she won't lose the tournament either, and Flora realizes that they are Jules and Ayato's opponents in the tournament even though they are all friends. In the evening, Ayato returned to his room and sat thinking about what he and Jules had discussed about his sister. He decided to call Irene, but it was Priscilla who answered, wanting to thank him for saving her and Irene from her controlling force, and then invited him to dinner at her house again. Irene interrupted and told him that she knew about his desire to have a long talk with Dirk, so he asked her to deliver a message to him that he wanted to meet him about his question about Haruka, and she agreed to fulfill his request and warned him that she is not the only one working for him, as there is a scary organization working for him, which is an intelligence agency. Priscilla then pulled her off camera to ask her to thank him properly for saving her, and then she came back, embarrassed, and thanked him for saving her that day, and even though she was barely making money after her gun was destroyed, she would have died if he hadn't been there. The next day, Ayato woke up and found that Aishiro had finally returned home after a while as he was busy covering the tournament all the time. Aishiro congratulated him on reaching the quarterfinals of the tournament and warned him that the twins team would be hard to beat. He then told him that he had read some information about them and found that they are adept at targeting opponents' weaknesses with their techniques, and that the easiest way to stop them is to counterattack their strengths. They were then interrupted by a call from Jules inviting him to lunch after Flora's insistence. She then asked him to meet her in the business district as the main street is very busy. Aishiro thought they were going on a date and offered to suggest a suitable place for them, which made Jules blush. Aishiro then found a quiet restaurant on a side street that wasn't crowded, so Jules had to agree to his suggestion, and after she ended the call, Ayato thanked him for volunteering to look for a suitable place for him and that he owed him a favor, so Aishiro told him that he would make sure to take advantage of this debt someday. Afterward, he went to lunch with Jules and Flora, who had ketchup all over her mouth. She remembered what she wanted to ask him and checked her notebook to ask him, but a large glass of parfait caught her eye, and she felt embarrassed telling Jules that she would like to have one. Ayato admires Jules' kindness to children in particular, and she tells him that children like her don't get many opportunities to be pampered, and candy is rare at the orphanage. Flora told her that since she started sending them money at the orphanage, according to the nuns there, it's easy. Jules was embarrassed and told her that it's excess money she receives for being in the top 10 in the academy, then surprised Flora when she wanted to feed her from her parfait. She decides to give Ayato some too and tells him that according to the nuns at the orphanage, food is better when shared by friends, while Jules is furious that he'll be eating from the same spoon she just ate from. She asks Flora to cut to the chase and asks how far Ayato's relationship with her has gone, and Jules yells at her that she shouldn't be asking them that kind of question and then realizes she's overreacting a bit. Flora told her that her brother had asked her to check on Ayato and how close he was to her, so she decided to take her diary to prevent her from asking any more of her brother's silly questions, but Flora tried to get it back because it was something she had been entrusted with. Corona interrupted them and asked Ayato to accompany her to meet Dirk in private. She told him that she was the secretary to the president of the Lee Wolf Academy Student Council. Jules was surprised by his sudden desire to meet him, but Ayato told her that he was the one who asked for an appointment with him yesterday. Jules insisted on accompanying him as they were teammates, but Corona told her that Dirk wanted to meet him alone, and when she got a call from him, he told her that it was okay to bring his friends with him, so Jules asked Flora to go back to the hotel and wait for them. Afterward, they went to meet Dirk in his fancy car, and as they drove around, Dirk noticed that Ayato seemed mentally disoriented and joked that the Saidokan Academy is nothing special if a student like him is the highest ranked student there. Jules wonders if someone has already ordered Ayato's destruction, but he denies it and plays dumb. When she tries to confront him, Ayato tells her that they have no evidence against him and tells her to ignore it for now. Dirk reminds him before they get to the point that he doesn't have to answer his questions. Ayato is surprised by his behavior and asks him why he agreed to meet with him if he doesn't intend to answer any questions, and he says it's just a whim. Ayato asks him to tell him everything he knows about his sister Haruka, and he tells him that he has only seen her once at the Eclipse Festival. When he asks Julius about the festival, she tells him that it's a festival organized by a scumbag. A game with no rules and fights are decided when one of the players loses consciousness or dies. Dirk tells them that the festival was cancelled a few years ago because the guard captain couldn't stand it any longer. He then says that Haruka was participating in the festival when he met her and was using her famous weapon, the Servarista. Ayato was shocked when he told him that she lost her fight against an opponent, but she didn't die, according to Dirk. But he doesn't know what happened to her since then, and he never saw her again. And after he finished answering his question, he asked him what Mediath meant to him in return. When he noticed Ayato's silence, he realized that he wasn't playing dumb and that he might be refusing to answer his question for some reason. So he decided to end the interview and kick them out of his car. But before they left, Julius asked him how he knew where they were, even though they had only decided hours ago, and he said he didn't have to answer her and kicked them out of his car. After he left, Corona told him that she saw a cute girl with them in that restaurant that looked like a doll at first glance, and she was wearing maid's clothes and a school logo. So Dirk was surprised that she was a student and not registered in his information book, which made him curious and ordered her to tell him more about this girl. Ayato remembers when he was young and practicing his family's fighting style with Haruka and couldn't beat her thanks to her advanced skills, with Saya watching them from outside while sitting on a tree branch. After they finished training, she approached Ayato, who was surprised that she was watching them train. He asked her to forget about what she saw because he was embarrassed to yell the name of the movement out loud. She encouraged him and told him that he would be fine and would get used to it quickly, so he wanted to ask her to help him train hard so that he could defeat his sister. Ayato is back to reality again, currently training with Julius and barely managing to dodge her attack due to his constant wandering, and she realizes that he has been mentally disturbed lately due to thinking about his sister. Ayato sat thinking about what Dirk had told him and whether his sister was alive or dead after losing the fight. Julius approached him and told him that he had told her he had no intention of going out of his way to look for her. She wondered if he was afraid of finding out why she had sealed her powers and disappeared without warning, and that she might have deliberately abandoned him. She then asked him to take his time to think about his sister deeply because she understood his feelings and how hard it is to be abandoned. He sat in his room thinking about it until he noticed something near his window, and when he approached, Saya appeared in his face like a zombie and deliberately frightened him. Then she entered the room and told him that she had to come herself because he hadn't been answering her calls lately. Then she stared at him deeply and asked him what he was going through lately and told him that Julius had hired her to talk to him because she was worried about him. Then she wondered if he really thought his sister had abandoned him on purpose, and when she saw him ponder the question, she slapped him and told him that Haruka would never do that losing the fight at the Eclipse Festival didn't make sense to her, and that if it was true, Haruka would have no way of communicating with him. Ayato felt that she was right and that he should think about it positively. Then Saya gave him the order ticket and reminded him of when they faced Haruka together as kids and failed to defeat her after forcing her to use her secret technique. She then told him that they would have to find Haruka and defeat her next time together, and before she left, she told him not to hesitate to lean on her when he needed to, and that she would always be there to help him. After Ayato regained his focus, he met with Julius to analyze the twins' game before they faced them, and found that they always aimed to attack their opponent's weaknesses to gain the biggest advantage throughout the fight. Then she realized that if they used the same trick on them, they would have a unique advantage. Ayato's only weakness was his power seal, something they couldn't touch, and Ayato realized that they could use it to stall for time until his power failed, and that's when Julius had an idea. Ayato and Julius prepared to face the twins Shenyan and Shenhua. The sisters mocked the fact that he chose to face them rather than retreat after revealing his power to everyone, and were eager to find out what he planned to use against them. Ayato unleashes his power and summons the sword of Servresta, and when the fight begins, he attacks Shenhua, but she easily dodges him, and then they are surprised when Shenyan uses the fog ability and the entire arena is covered in a smoky barrier. Although Ayato didn't expect the twins to use this ability, he realized it was just a fake smoke, and when the crowd started complaining about not being able to see, Shenyan decided to remove the smoke a minute after Ayato used his power. She then used the cloning technique to buy more time by forcing him to attack fake clones of herself. When she saw him standing at attention without attacking, she thought to lure him, and all the clones rushed towards him at once. Ayato is distracted to find the real version of herself and uses the opportunity to attack him at close range. As Julius tries to back him up, Shenhua appears out of nowhere and uses the smoke technique to blow her face off. Julius decides to gather her strength and tells him that she will cover him so that he can defeat Shenyan first. She then makes his body surrounded by flames as he rushes towards her at full speed. When she realizes their plan, she creates a barrier wall between them, and as soon as Ayato comes out from behind him, he receives a loud explosion of smoke right in his face. Shenyan sarcastically tells him that he should be more careful because he won't be able to see her sister's amulets like that, and then he realizes that the thick smoke she used at the beginning is still there and has turned into amulets, and thinks that if they burn warn them they will win the fight. On the other side, Julius was about to deliver a powerful attack, but Shenhua appeared out of nowhere and stunned her to immobilize her, which made Ayato furious, and he rushed towards Shenyan to defeat her so that he could support Julius and continue attacking her clones until he was left with 2 clones. Unfortunately, he chose to attack the fake one. 5 minutes into the fight, Ayato began to weaken, and Shenyan realized that her and her sister's plan had succeeded in targeting his weakness, while Julius was beaten so badly by Shenhua that she felt motionless. Shenyan approached Ayato and started taunting him, and she was surprised to hear the sound of his chuckles, and was soon surprised to see him grab his sword and strike her from very close range, succeeding in breaking her badge and disqualifying her from the fight. He was shocked when she appeared out of nowhere in front of him and realized that all this time he had been fighting a bunch of clones. She then told him that she used the clones to bring him to this point of weakness and despair and could attack him at will. Then she threw a large number of amulets and surrounded him from all sides. He decided not to give up while the fight was still going on and gathered his courage and what was left of his strength to head towards her. But as soon as a single amulet exploded in his face, he ended up floundering among the amulets and being blown up from all sides without stopping. Before Shenyan could make up her mind, Julius used her ability to fly towards him and pick him up before the amulet could hit him, but Shenyan continued to attack them until they were a safe distance away. Then Julius told him that she owed him an apology, and when he tried to get up again, she told him that his only problem was that he wanted to carry everything on his shoulders alone and told him that she would protect him this time. Ayato has a flashback for a few seconds and feels something is wrong with him. As the twins approach them, Julius is surprised that he gets up again as if he was unharmed. He tells her that he feels better thanks to her and asks her to do him a favor before continuing the fight. Ayato asks Julius to buy in some time as he wants to try an idea. She tells him she'll try, but he has to hurry because she can't hold out much longer. He enters his subconscious and touches the circle of light that appears in front of him while he's in handcuffs. The twins scoffed at the idea that Julius was going to face them alone in her condition. She told them that she wouldn't underestimate herself if she were them, and then surprised them by using her flame technique to target the amulets instead. Shenyan wondered if she could protect Ayato while she concentrated on controlling her flames, and when she threw some amulets at him, Julius blocked them and vowed not to let them near him, so she used more ice amulets. Julius realizes that the ice is an illusion and stops blocking him until she is surprised by a huge block of ice this time, and before she realizes it, she receives a violent kick from Shenhua while in stealth mode, and she feels that she is in trouble, and when she looks at Ayato, she finds that he is still immersed in his subconscious mind. Meanwhile, Ayato still remembered Haruka's advice to him and Saya to pay attention to every detail of the opponent, even their breath and gestures, by expanding their senses, and told Ayato that this technique is known in their family as Shiki. Julius wondered why Shenhua didn't target her badge, and when I told her that she missed, she decided to use her trump card to make her regret missing her chance to disqualify her from the fight, whereupon she used the Semisarada technique to cause a large-scale explosion. However, the twins were able to avoid the damage thanks to their barrier, and Shenyan decided to end it quickly, tying her up and starting to torture her to have some fun before settling the matter. At that time, Ayato obtained a key inside his subconscious and was able to free himself from Haruka's restraints. While Shenyan was enjoying torturing Julius and decided to end it with a knockout blow, Ayato, to everyone's surprise, blocked her and used his full power again, freeing Julius from her bonds. When she asked if he could get rid of the seal, he told her that he had at least leveled up to the 2nd level and could store his leaked mana inside his body. When he told her that he could hold out for more than an hour, she told him that she had reached her limit and couldn't fight anymore, so he decided to take care of the twins on his own. He then used Shiki to sense all the amulets around him and even managed to locate Shenhua while she was in stealth mode. Shenyan was shocked that he could see the amulets and dodge them as he approached them step by step. He also became unaffected by their attacks and made Shenhua accidentally attack one of her amulets, and when she deactivated her stealth mode, he easily broke her badge. Shenyan is furious and decides to use all her amulets since he now has the advantage over them. She weaves a giant ball of amulets and makes several copies of them to multiply their effect, surprising Ayato by targeting Julius instead. Ayato rushes towards her at full speed and blocks Shenyan's attack before it reaches her, then directs his full power into his sword and manages to cut all of her amulet balls in addition to the original in one fell swoop, and while she is shocked by what she sees in front of her, he rushes towards her and hits her with a punch that sends her flying like her amulet balls. Deciding to have a little fun before destroying her badge, he and Julius were declared the winners of the match after Shenyan fainted from his punch and were finally able to advance to the semifinals. When they got to the waiting room, Flora greeted them warmly, admiring their incredible stamina and chemistry, and Claudia told them that thanks to them, the Academy has more points than expected. She then approached Ayato in a suspicious manner and said that she wanted to express her gratitude to him personally and invited him to come to her room tonight, then pulled him out without him being able to resist her. Julius grabbed him and told her that they had to discuss tomorrow's fight plan, and they didn't have time for that and started fighting with him in front of Flora. Meanwhile, tournament chairman Madiath found that this year's edition was a great success after ticket sales and attendance surpassed last year's edition, and as he looked at the photos of the participants, he kept looking at Ayato's photo for a moment, and it turned out that he already knew his sister Haruka. Saya, on the other hand, was looking at the order ticket that Ayato had given her when they were young, and when Kirin wondered about it, she told her that it was her lucky charm that grants her any wish she makes. She thought she would wish that they could win today's fight, but Saya told her that today's victory was something they would accomplish themselves, and she wouldn't need a lucky charm. Kirin tells her that she should thank her because her wish to save her father is about to come true, and Saya decides to tell her the story of her father, who lost most of his organs in an accident while working in the lab. When they found that his mind was still intact, he ended up hanging from the nerve center in their house, but he was happy to be free to do what he loved, making guns for her. Kirin realized why she was angry about Camilla's words about her father and told her that this power was made just for her, so she couldn't forgive anyone who refused. When it was time for the fight, they met Camilla and Ernesta on their way. Camilla told her that she was wrong to judge her beforehand, as her weapons, when she has them in her hands during a fight, are exceptionally powerful and unmatched, but she still believes that her weapons are not suitable for combat. Saya vowed to force them to recognize her weapons after they taste defeat. Camilla accepted the challenge and vowed that she would retract her words if she lost today's match against them, and minutes later, they headed to the ring to prepare to face the robots of Camilla and Ernesta. ARD decides to give them a minute to attack him without reply. As the fight begins, he advises them that Saya should face him individually if they plan to get past his defensive barrier, but Kirin insists on facing him herself and attacks with her sword. ARD told her that a human like her would not be able to overcome his reflexes and that none of her blows would be effective against him. She realized his weakness and was soon surprised when his body involuntarily moved backwards as a result of her blow. After she was able to bypass his protective barrier, she asked him to take back what he said earlier and not to underestimate her team again before she made another attack and forced him to dodge it. She warned him that she intended to decide the matter with her next move, and when he realized that she had become a threat to him, he used his weapon to attack her before completing a minute. Then he took back his words and asked her to tell him what kind of technique she had used. She told him that he was able to block her at first because he was a robot that was able to analyze her data and anticipate her next move before she made it, and all she did was change his attack style and said that his lack of combat experience as a robot is what will cause him to lose the fight. On the other hand, Saya refused to attack RMC until the minute was up in order to face her at full strength in order to feel the sense of victory. RMC was shocked to see her turn into a full robot instead of using some kind of gun and managed to hit her with a loud bomb that did more damage than she expected, and the crowd went wild. Meanwhile, Flora was kidnapped by an unknown person without anyone noticing. RMC realizes how strong Saya is after taking so much damage and finds that this is the secret of Camilla's admiration for her and decides not to take her lightly and fight with all her might, moving around the ring at a speed that Saya can't keep up with her eyes. She decides to use the protective barrier to block any attack coming from her and seizes the right opportunity to fire missiles at her, and when she thinks she has succeeded in blowing her up, she finds that RMC has a secret weapon, a shield that protects against all kinds of attacks, as well as the ruined Shalev ultimate spear. Saya prepares to respond to her attack and compares the damage output of their respective weapons, and when their projectiles meet in the air, they destroy each other, while Kirin is still trying to inflict maximum damage on ARD, not giving him a chance to respond with an attack. He decides to focus on defense and tells her that the more he blocks her strikes, the more he learns about her, calling her the best fighter he's ever faced, and she realizes that her attack pattern will only work against him once. When she took the opportunity to attack him with a surprise strike, she was surprised that he blocked her blow with his face and caused a small scratch. He decided it was time to reveal his hidden power, and when he asked RMC for help, she refused and told him that it was too early to use the hidden power. She then continued to attack Saya, who was dodging all her shots, deliberately not counterattacking in order to analyze the power of her weapons and realized that their weapons are almost on the same level, so she decided to prove it in practice. RMC decides to test its power and compare it to her own, but to her surprise, Saya's weapon manages to block her attack and divert it to her, causing a large explosion, but she does not receive any damage thanks to ARD's timely rescue. Kirin then approached Saya and apologized to her for her failed attack, but Saya told her that they had the advantage so far in the fight and that was enough, and when RMC heard that, she decided to follow ARD's wishes and use the invisible weapon. Then, to their surprise, she abandoned her robotic body parts and merged them with ARD's body to form a superpower many times stronger than before, then told the two girls that he was now in his true form, and in a flash, he attacked them without them realizing it. Kirin realizes that ARD's strength and speed are on a whole other level, and when Saya analyzes him, he asks her to buy her some time. Kirin rushes towards him and starts attacking him continuously, but he quickly blocks her and hits her with his hammer. When Saya Saya approached her, he decided to destroy them both in one fell swoop. Saya felt that they were in trouble, especially since Kirin couldn't move, so she decided to face him alone and protect Kirin, and then noticed that he became slower after the merger. The two of them launched their attacks at the same time, causing a huge explosion with no damage. Saya abandons her robot appearance and decides to use a different type of weapon to support Kirin, then heads towards him in preparation for a double attack. Afterward, Ayato and Julius went to their room and found their bodies covered in bandages after being defeated by the Super ARD clone. Frustrated that there was still a lot to do if not for the broken Academy badges, Julius decided to avenge them by qualifying for the final with Ayato. They were then interrupted by Claudia, who expressed her admiration for their ability to reach the semifinals despite the defeat and felt that the future of the Academy would be brighter with their presence. Then they noticed that Flora was late in coming to meet with them. Camilla and Ernesta received a call from Dirk, who offered to cooperate with him and help him with whatever he wanted to do in exchange for satisfactory benefits, and told them that he had a souvenir he wanted to keep in a safe place. Meanwhile, Julius received a call from Flora's cell phone, and when she answered, they were surprised to hear a strange voice telling them that he was holding Flora and would release her after they met his demands. When they asked him what he wanted, he told them to temporarily freeze Ayato's sword power, not to go to the police or withdraw from the tournament, and then hung up before they could respond. Claudia told them that this kind of seal would mean that Ayato would never be able to use the sword again, but Ayato agreed to do so in order to save Flora, so Saya and Kirin decided to go and save her themselves. Claudia had an idea to pretend to agree to his terms and start saving Flora, but Julius was afraid of losing Flora and having to sacrifice either Flora or her goal of winning the tournament. Claudia advised her to be determined and told her that she would be able to achieve both, so she decided to follow her plan and teach that kidnapper a lesson. When Saya and Kirin started to move, she felt worried about them, but Saya told her that everything would be fine and that they should help their friends in times of trouble, no matter what. Claudia then asked Ayato to use a weapon other than Cerberista, while she uses her contacts to delay his immobilization, as this is an Academy procedure, and when the kidnapper sees that he is using another weapon, he will think that he has fulfilled his request. She tells them that the mastermind behind all this is Dirk and his organization, and asks Saya and Kirin to start the rescue operation by the time the tournament's closing ceremony takes place. Meanwhile, Flora tries to think of a way to escape and free herself, but the kidnapper quickly uses force to subdue her, and she senses that it might be Dante and decides to temporarily comply with him until the right time. Saya and Kirin went to the business district according to Claudia's search radius to locate Flora. Kirin felt a slight pain in her leg, but decided to keep going and do her best to ensure that the plan succeeds. Meanwhile, Ayato and Julius were in the arena preparing to face Elliot and Dorotio's team, and Julius felt as if she was used to feeling helpless in every fight, so Ayato told her to focus on the fight and rely on the others to save Flora. Julius realizes that Elliot is a veteran, having participated in 2 editions of the tournament before, and it will be difficult for them to settle the fight in a short time, so she decides to take care of Dorotio and leave Elliot to Ayato, who wants to try a new idea with his current weapon. At the start of the fight, Ayato unleashed his full power, and when Julius summoned her sword, she was surprised to see Dorotio using his special armor for the first time during the tournament, a special armor that has the ability to self-repair itself when damaged, and then summoned his super horse to gain an advantage over Julius. Realizing that he will fight with everything he has from the beginning, he starts attacking her, while on the other side, Elliot wonders about Ayato not using his famous weapon and thinks he is going easy on him, but Ayato tells him that it's out of his hands for now. Then attacked Ayato, and they kept exchanging attacks with equal strength, and Ayato realized that his opponent was a good swordsman and a match for Kirin, and soon Elliot was surprised by a sudden blow that damaged his sword. Ayato then used his family technique to target his badge and easily knocked him out of the match, much to the shock of Elliot, who thought he had a chance. On the other side, Dorotio was still fighting like a knight on horseback. Julius managed to damage part of his steel armor, but it quickly repaired itself and then responded with a similar attack, creating 3 layers of flames in front of him, but he managed to bypass them and almost hit her in the neck if he didn't dodge it in time. Then she decided to play her trump card and started throwing flame balls at him from a distance to prevent him from approaching her, and when he rushed towards her to target her badge before giving his armor time to heal, he could not resist the high temperature and fell to the ground. She approached him and told him that he had acted rashly, but he realized that he had rushed his decisions, admitted defeat, and let her destroy his badge without resistance, and was declared the winner of the match and qualified for the final with Ayato. Meanwhile, Saya and Kirin were looking for a shortcut to get to Flora's place when Saya received a call from Ayato telling her that he was on his way, and she realized that he had won his fight and qualified for the final. Realizing that it would be very difficult to defeat the robot duo without their most powerful weapon, they decided to find Flora before the start of the final match, and although Saya felt frustrated about the whole thing, she was determined to do her best. Ayato, on the other hand, found that they had 18 hours to complete their mission before the start of tomorrow's match. Aishiru joined them to congratulate them on making it to the final, but realized that he had no idea what had happened. Ayato asked Dirk if he knew anything about his organization, Grimalkin, and he said that he didn't have any information about them, as they are better than private intelligence organizations when it comes to gathering information when it comes to secrecy. So he told them that he would help them as much as he could, and on their way, Ayato thought of another way to get clues. So he went undercover to a bar to meet Irene. She tells him that she doesn't have much to say as the information she knows isn't useful, but realizing that Dirk is expecting them, he doesn't bother to contact her. As he's about to leave, she tells him that Flora's location is full of criminals and could be a trap for them. Then she thought she might be in the Rotlicht area, a place where legal and illegal markets meet, but he wouldn't be able to get there easily unless he had a lot of money. Meanwhile, Camille was upset that they had to use their invisible power before the final, and Ernesta tried to comfort her by telling her that they would have lost if they hadn't used it. Camilla wants to create a universal weapon that anyone can use, and I told her that there is no such weapon in the world, while Ernesta wants to create autonomous robots capable of expressing their emotions to have the same rights as humans. Camilla remembered their first meeting when her house was attacked by anti-government forces, and she was the only survivor after the death of her parents and the loss of half of her organs. When she regained consciousness, she found Ernesta taking care of her after replacing her missing organs with robot organs. Camilla has since sworn to give her half of her life. Camilla tells her that she realizes their goals are different and has no intention of criticizing her dream, but the reason for her anger is that the power of robots is too dangerous to be used in real life. Ernesta says that all she cares about is winning so that robots can be accepted as students at the academy and realize her dream of robot autonomy. Their conversation was interrupted by ARD asking her to leave the scar on his face intact. When she asked him why, he told her that he had learned a lot in this fight, especially after discovering his flaws, and felt as if he had reached a stage of growth in his consciousness and wanted to leave a trace of it. RMC then asked her to make some adjustments to her outer armor to narrow the range between it and ARD's body, and Camilla was surprised at their awareness, while Ernesta was impressed and excited that her dream was about to come true. Meanwhile, Ayato was frustrated that he didn't get a single useful piece of information inside Rotlicht and kept wandering around the alleys until he was stopped by some guards who noticed his strange movements, so he pretended to be looking for someone, and when they asked him to accompany them, he ran away and they continued to chase him until he managed to hide. But soon he found two guards standing on the other side and felt he was in trouble as he did not want to make a fuss and draw the attention of the kidnapper. Then he was surprised when a mysterious girl appeared to offer him help. She asks Ayato if he has met her before, and she tells him that it is the first time. Then she grabs his hand and pulls him behind her to escape the guards, and after they are safe, she asks him why they are chasing him, but he refuses to tell her. The girl respects his wishes and tells him that he should wait a bit if he intends to come back, as the area is tense because of the festival and the police are taking stricter measures on the streets, which makes the mafia that runs Rotlicht act crazy, so Ayato decides to look elsewhere. He is surprised to find that the mysterious girl knows his name, and when he asks how she knows about him, she tells him that he is famous for being one of the finalists of the Vista tournament and that he is not disguised enough. Then they were surprised when a silver-haired maniac named Gen appeared in front of them from the darkness and asked him to accompany him without resistance, but when he saw the girl, he became excited and took out his weapons to attack her, and Ayato was surprised by her previous knowledge of him as a former 7th ranker in the Geelong Academy. She then expressed her displeasure that he ended up working for the Mafia after he was one of the participants in the Lindor's tournament and made it to the semifinals, so he rushed to attack her, but Ayato blocked him to protect her, and when Gen passed him, he was surprised that she had some skills to dodge him. Before he realizes it, she dodges him and hits him with a kick that makes him stick to the wall, then asks Ayato if he's looking for someone and offers to help, but before he has a chance to answer, she decides to go somewhere else. The girl then recognizes his self-reliant and considerate personality and tells him that she noticed it while watching his fight against the twins and says that she can help him locate the person he's looking for. He was surprised that she had the ability to scout and told him that she just needed information that she could visualize to use with her skill. He told her that he was looking for a 10-year-old girl who had been kidnapped by an unknown person, and when he showed her her profile, she took in enough information. Then she asked him to promise not to tell anyone what happened between them. When he opened the map, he was surprised by the change in her features and hair color. He remembered seeing her picture on the bulletin board before and realized it was Sylvia, the top-ranked student at Kionville Academy. Sylvia started singing a song that reached the entire city, and her energy kept circling the buildings looking for Flora until she found her on the north side outside of Rotlicht. Before she left, he asked her for her number, and she thought he was flirting with her, but he blushed and told her he wanted to thank her properly later, so she gave him the number and wished him luck in finding Flora. He then called Julius and told her that he was able to locate Flora without going into details, and when they decided to go to the location, Saya told them that it would be reckless to go there when they were in the middle of a fight after hours. Saya and Kirin decide to take over with Aishiro. Ayato has no choice but to return to the Vista tournament headquarters, and Saya tells tells him that they will rescue Flora before the fight starts so that he can use his sword. The kidnapper, Werner, receives a call from Dirk, who tells him that the situation is stable and under control. He tells him that a suspicious boy has been hanging around recently and that he needs to be careful. The next morning, the trio arrives at Flora's location according to the map, an abandoned building that used to be a casino before a customer destroyed it and Aishiro hacked into the building system to control the doors. Saya and Kirin were afraid of him when he was able to open the doors with his control panel, but he told them that it was not difficult. Then they all headed inside, and on their way, a shadow appeared in front of them out of nowhere. But Kirin cut it off, and then they knew they were in the right place. Then a group of shadows started appearing all at once in front of them, and they ended up surrounded by a large number of them. But Saya and Kirin managed to get rid of them easily and realized that the shadows were programmed to carry out simple commands, including eliminating any intruders in the place. After they finished with the shadows, Saya realized that she only had a few shots left, and soon the shadows came back in larger numbers, so she decided to take a risk and rush in with Kirin. But then Lester appeared and disposed of the shadows with his axe. When they asked why he was there, he said that Aishiro had forced him to come after blackmailing him, so they decided to rely on him to take care of the infinite shadows and go looking for Flora. So he had to fight against the shadows, feeling angry that he was involved in such a thing. Meanwhile, it's time for the final match between Ayato and Julia's team against Camilla and Ernesta's robots, so they decide not to wait too long and head to the arena. On their way, Julius wonders if having a group of friends he can trust is a good thing for him. She told him that Flora and all the kids back home meant everything to her, and she swore she'd do anything for them, but now that she thought about it, she was closed off from the world, and it would be nice to have friends she could lean on. They head to the arena and prepare for the final fight of the tournament, and she expresses that she wants to win this fight more than anything else. ARD and RMC appear before them, and ARD expresses his excitement at finally facing Ayato, then asks him to impress him more than Kirin did. He tells him that he can't guarantee that he will live up to his strength, but he will make sure that his team wins at all costs. ARD pulls out his hammer, hoping that his opponents will be worthy of his respect, only to be surprised by RMC scolding him for blabbering despite his pitiful physical condition and ordering him to keep his mouth shut before she blows his head off. On the other side, Claudia watches with anticipation as Ayato uses another sword, while Ernesto realizes what Dirk meant by the souvenir he wants to get. Ayato and Julius attacked ARD first, but unfortunately, ARD had retained Ayato's previous fighting style data from the day he faced Silas. However, he soon realized that his strike was just bait so that Julius could damage him with her flames. Before they could launch another attack, RMC interrupted and told them that it was rude to ignore her during the fight, and Ayato told her that he was watching her carefully while facing her partner. It turns out that Ayato is using Shiki to sense the movements of everyone around him, which is why he was so quick to dodge RMC's successive attacks. They focus on ARD again, and by attacking him in one go, they managed to penetrate his armor and do some damage. When RMC interrupted them again, Ayato rushed towards her, and before his sword could touch her, ARD turned his shield towards her, and Julius created a circle of flames underneath him so that she could burn him without him being able to defend himself, but she was surprised by his body's resistance to the high temperature. Ayato and Julius felt they were in trouble because they couldn't use the same trick twice and had to think of other ways quickly, while RMC realized that their plan was to attack her to lure ARD into giving up his armor for her. ARD admires their chemistry and decides to reveal their secret technique now, so RMC is forced to use the fusion technique again, despite Ernesta's warning that they must use it wisely. Julius decides to use the time it takes to complete their fusion to attack them, but to their surprise, she uses the ruin charge and causes a huge explosion in the ring, with flame shards falling everywhere, and manages to buy a lot of time until her fusion with ARD's body is complete. Ayato decides to take a risk and rushes into the shrapnel to prevent the fusion from being completed in any way. He succeeds in destroying the RMC badge and eliminating Camilla from the match, but he still can't stop the fusion, and ARD becomes his superhuman form. Saya and Kirin found Flora's place. Seeing them, she tried to stop them from approaching her, but Kirin started to untie her, and that's when Werner's shadow appeared out of nowhere and attacked her. She realizes that someone is able to use the shadows as a weapon, and that they use the light to move freely in dark areas. As she continues to dodge the shadow attacks, Werner decides to show himself and threatens to end Flora's life if she gets in his way. She has no choice but to submit to him, but he is surprised when Saya tries to surprise him with her sniper rifle and manages to dodge the bullet before it hits his head, and Kirin uses the opportunity to untie Flora and take her away. Werner shoots her in the leg, knocking her down. She decides to take care of him and tells her to run away with Saya. The two begin to clash, but before she realizes his next move, he's too fast, and before she knows it, he's got a deep wound on her. He surrounded Saya and Flora with his shadows and told her that he had targeted a vital part of her body, and that if she didn't heal immediately, she would die. He advised her not to try to act rashly in her condition. Kirin decided to accept the challenge. Warren was surprised at her persistence and shocked to see her intend to use her family's technology to attack him, and before he could blink, he ended up split in half. Kirin rushed towards him and hit him in the shoulders, but she soon collapsed after losing her strength, and when he approached her, he was surprised to receive a thunderous projectile from Saya's weapon, and Kirin began to lose consciousness little by little as she thought about what happened to Ayato during his fight. Meanwhile, Ayato continued to attack ARD with all his might, while he taunted him with his super strength, and Julius tried to burn him in various ways, but to no avail as they began to get frustrated with his excessive strength. While ARD felt that he was able to use that much more power than before, and was excited about having the true power that Ernesta had given him, Ayato had the idea that he might be bound by a seal like him, but Julius didn't accept the idea at first because there was no particular reason. While they were speculating, ARD began to launch successive violent attacks towards them, and they had no choice but to run and dodge them until he decided to use his shield to trap them in a narrow range, and when he used the super hammer technique to fire the projectile towards them, Julius detonated it before it reached them, and they felt that they were in a great predicament and had no chance to do anything. Suddenly, everyone heard Claudia's voice over the speakers after she went to the commentary room and told them that Flora was safe and gave Ayato the green light to use his special sword, and although ARD had no idea what was happening around him, he decided to maximize his power, and when he fired his next projectile, he was shocked to see Ayato split it in half and destroyed his armor, and Ayato decided that it was time to show everyone his true power. Ayato and ARD, who was thrilled when Ayato was able to use his famous weapon, told him that he still has a lot left in the tank since he hasn't reached his full strength yet. Ayato and Julius were surprised when he blocked their attacks at the same time, and soon his unstable body began to change. Meanwhile, Ernesta watched the fight with anticipation, while Camilla expressed her concern that ARD's numbers were rising faster than usual. Ernesta told her that she can't do anything for him now that RMC has been eliminated, as she is the only one who can control him. On the other side, Ayato and Julius sat watching ARD's suspicious movements. Then Ayato realized that ARD is unable to keep up with the power of his sword due to his nature as a robot and began to lose control of himself due to the damage he received from his power. After a while, ARD's body became full of radioactive scratches, and he realized that he had somehow reached the level of his true power. Then he decided to settle the matter with Ayato now and rushed towards him, and then continued to hit him with all his strength, and Julius tried to blow him up with her special technique, but to no avail as he was able to contain her flame ball in his hands and use it to his advantage and cause the entire arena to explode. Ayato saw that Julius had taken a lot of damage from ARD's all-out attack and thought that if he could match his speed, he would be able to deliver a surprise blow to him and end it quickly. She then told him that he should try to pour his full power into the sword as Cerberista takes the form that best suits its user. Ayato did just that and had an invincible sword with two different powers combined in a typical way, and before he collapsed, Julius told him that was all she could do for him. Then he got close enough to ARD, and before he knew it, Ayato was attacking him non-stop, and when ARD thought to make a surprise attack, he disappeared in front of him and chased after him until he used his family's special technique and managed to knock him out and break his badge. Ayato and Julius were then announced as the winners of this year's edition of the Vista tournament, while Ernesta sighed in resignation and admitted defeat, as did ARD. Celebrations began around the city. Then tournament chairman Madiath honored Ayato and Julius and presented them with the championship shield to the cheers of the crowd. In the meantime, Werner is surprised by a voice behind him that tells him information about himself that few people know. He realizes that he is a member of the Shadow Stars, and when he asks who sent him, Aishiro refuses to tell him, so he does not hesitate to attack him with his shadow weapons. On the other side, Ayato was receiving praise and congratulations from his comrades and was surprised that Lester helped the others in rescuing Flora. He told him that he was forced to do so after being blackmailed by Aishiro, and when he wondered about his whereabouts, he told him that he escaped while fighting with the shadows while he was able to take down Wernher using his invisible abilities. Saya apologizes for failing to catch the kidnapper, pats her on the head and tells her that they don't need him anymore. Then they are surprised when Camilla and RMC join them and ask Saya to duel her again. Saya was surprised by her request since she was the winner of the previous fight, but Camilla told her that her weapon was stronger than RMC, and although she won, she can't admit it yet, so Saya agreed to a rematch and vowed to crush them next time. In the evening, Dirk spoke with Ernesta about their collaboration, but she declined as it is not her favorite type, and when he asked her about the third robot she intends to make, she said that she hasn't told Camilla about it yet because she doesn't know what might happen in the future. Ayato and his companions then went to visit Kirin in the hospital. Then Julius joined them after the police finished questioning her and said that she told them everything about Dirk. Then Flora followed her with her head down and apologized for causing so much trouble. Julius patted her on the head and told her that she was a good girl, but she was still young. Then she signaled Ayato with her eyes for them to have a private conversation. When they were alone, she got confused and spilled the drink on his pants. When she took out her handkerchief to clean it, he refused and told told her that she might challenge him to another fight if her favorite handkerchief got dirty. She gathered her courage and told him that she wouldn't have won the tournament if she hadn't teamed up with him, but they still had a long way to go. Ayato vowed to keep moving forward with her for both of them, and they drank their coffee to win their first edition of the tournament. A few months later, Julius asks her companions if they have any plans for the winter break. Kirin says she will use the time to train hard to become stronger. Ayato plans to go through his usual training as well, and Saya plans to sleep as much as possible. Julius wants to suggest something to them, and they end up traveling with her to spend the holiday in her homeland. Ayato was surprised to find that the people of Lusitania greeted them like heroes and celebrated them all the way from the airport to the house, and after they arrived, they were surprised to see Julius' brother, Jolbert Murray, with his wife Maria. Julius asked to have a private conversation with her brother, and Jolbert told her that he had invited them to thank them for helping Flora and saving her, and then introduced himself to her companions and told them that he was considered the king of Lusitania. Julius expressed her indignation at the idea of the victory parade that he gets suddenly prepared. He said that he deliberately did not tell her because she would have rejected it strongly. She said that he brought Ayato into the matter as well. He told her that everyone likes Ayato as her chosen partner, which made them feel embarrassed, and then invited them to a feast tomorrow to celebrate their arrival. Julius then apologized to Ayato for taking another turn, as she invited him to show him her hometown, and he admired the tall buildings around the kingdom in addition to their palace. She told him that the palace was built during the Great Roman Empire before the kingdom gained its independence later. Then began to explain the history of the kingdom, and Ayato realized that it was more like a gained city because the so-called consolidated establishment controlled the situation inside Lusitania, and because of that there are many people suffering from poverty, and she expressed her desire to change the system of this country. At night, Flora enters Ayato's room to invite him to dinner and tells him that Saya is not in her room. He says that she has bad directions and is probably lost, so he goes to look for her and finds her standing on the roof. When he approached her, he found her looking at the sky, sad, and she told him that she always wanted to apologize to him because she was the one who stopped communicating with him when they were young after he left town with his sister after she felt bad about the loneliness and that their relationship had become distant. But when they met again, she regretted that she might have been able to look for Haruka if she hadn't stopped calling him or at least supported him psychologically. She asked him to lean on her when he needed it and promised that she would help him, so he remembered his promise to Julius and told her that he would lean on her when that day came. Claudia took the opportunity to tell them about next year's festival and asked them to join her team at Grips. Julius was curious as to why she was so obsessed with Grips when she could have participated in Vista or Lindor's. I told her that it would be difficult to win all the tournaments in 1 year and that it would be legally unacceptable, and I felt that she would have a better chance of winning if she had people to rely on as she has a weakness due to her clairvoyant powers. She then added that they would have to face the Life Lords to win the tournament, which is why she chose them in addition to several strong teams from other academies, and they all agreed to join her team and participate in next year's Grips festival. Ayato then tried on a tuxedo and changed his hairstyle, looking more masculine than before, but he was overwhelmed by the change in appearance, and when he picked up his sword, Flora told him that weapons were not allowed during the festivities. Ayato left his gun with her and went to check on Julius. When he entered her room, he was surprised that all the girls were dressed up in evening gowns. He stood by the door with his mouth hanging open until Claudia told him that at times like this, he should give them a few compliments. He felt embarrassed and said that they looked great in those outfits, and then she pushed Julius toward him to accompany her during the ceremony, and then everyone joined the rest of the guests, and Ayato was surprised that so many people had come to their reception. He told Julius that he thought she was from a poor family, and she told him that the kingdom has money to spend on her, but she has no money to use herself. Plus, she has a different personality than her brother Jolbert, who never talks about politics and looks like a perfect puppet for the government, which is why he has stayed in office until now. Ayato was surprised when she told him that he has many girlfriends even though he is married, and that all of them are affiliated with the Consolidated Foundation and can be considered spies. Then she added that Claudia's father is an employee of the foundation and that she visited the kingdom several times as a child, which is why she has a close relationship with Jolbert. Then she said that he works under her mother as an enforcer within the organization, where he has no chance to rise to that position because he would have to give up his humanity, but he will never do that, and interrupted her speech when she noticed Jolbert gesturing for her to join them. Feeling irritated and not wanting to have a conversation with him like he did yesterday, Ayato decides to go outside to get some fresh air, while Claudia notices that someone is peeking from afar. Ayato notices that Kirin is feeling very awkward among the fans praising her performance at the Vista tournament, so he decides to save her from this situation and asks her to accompany him, and soon she feels relieved to finally catch her breath and tells him that it is difficult for her to have conversations with strangers and that she is not as beautiful as the rest. He tells her that this outfit suits her and makes her look the same age as everyone else. As he's about to leave, she asks him to try the feeling of crossing her arms with him, and he agrees, and Saya appears out of nowhere and ends up trapped between them. An old man named Gusav interrupts them to express his admiration admiration for the girl's attraction to him and asks him if he plans to participate in the next Grips festival. Ayato replies that he hasn't thought about it yet and advises him not to be a member of Team Claudia. Yusap told him that it was his job to prevent him from becoming a member of Team Claudia, and if he refused, he would have to use force. They were surprised when he summoned a giant lion with wings whose roar alone caused the glass of the palace balcony to shatter. Fortunately, Saya was hiding a gun inside her clothes and used the detonation technique to throw the lion out of the palace. Then Ayato approached him and decided to use his family's wrestling techniques and started kicking the winged lion's ass and snake head, and after he fell motionless, the others attacked him using their skills all at once and were able to overcome him. Yusap is amazed at how strong Ayato is despite not having a weapon and is so excited that he decides to take matters into his own hands and will make sure to defeat him next time. The next day, Jolbert tells them the name of the person who attacked them yesterday, an internationally wanted criminal, and they conclude that he accepted the mission against Ayato for financial reasons. When he offers them police protection, they refuse, saying they can take care of themselves. After everyone leaves, he asks Ayato and Julius to stay for a moment because he wants to discuss something important. They were shocked when he started his speech by proposing to Ayato to marry Julius, which made her feel angry, thinking he was joking, but he seemed serious as he wanted to discuss the engagement. Ayato told him that they were not in that kind of relationship, and when Julius objected, he told her that he was doing it for her own good so that she wouldn't end up like him. He then told her that she had to choose someone she could get along with for as long as she was able, otherwise she would have to marry anyone who was suitable for the unified enterprise. She sat there thinking for a while and then realized that the victory parade was a deliberate way to introduce them to everyone. When she asked why he insisted on it, he told her that circumstances had changed since she won the Vista tournament and became highly valued in the kingdom, then tried to convince Ayato to accept the marriage proposal since he would have a peaceful life inside the kingdom. Jolbert indirectly told him that he would have to choose between one restriction or another. He told him that Julius had traveled all the way to Asterisk to break the shackles and would not accept to be the handcuffs that would bind her. Jolbert wanted to make sure that there was a chance that he could accept this offer if Julius agreed to these shackles. When their faces turned red, he realized that it might happen in the future and asked Julius not to participate in the Grips festival next year. When she asked him why, he told her that now that she's crazy famous after winning the Vista championship, if she were to win Grips, she could marginalize him or remove him from his position, so she refused his request and walked away angrily. When Ayato questioned the matter, Jolbert told him that he is on the throne of this kingdom because he is useless and obedient to the Unified Corporation's project, and if Julius wins the festival, he can be easily dispensed with, which will lead to her taking over the kingdom and using her power to help the poor and ending up in a feud with the Unified Corporation. He then asked Ayato to help him convince her to give up the festival. Finding him as helpless as he was, he thought that he would have to be even more useless to keep his position and decided to leave the care of her to him. Ayato then went to where Julius was and was surprised to find her playing with snowballs with the children. When one of them noticed his presence, they gathered around him. Then Sister Teresa, who is in charge of the church and the orphanage, welcomed him, and soon the rest of the nuns gathered around Julius to welcome her back. Teresa said she was happy that Julius had chosen someone like him to be her partner and thanked him for going to the trouble of saving Flora. When he noticed that there were Genesla users among the nuns, she told him that she was one of them and that she was teaching the children martial arts. He noticed an old arboretum covered in snow, and Teresa said it was for some girl who used to live here who never liked to fight. He was surprised when Julius wanted to go outside to get some air. Ayato followed her outside and they walked around together, and then he told her that Jolbert was worried about her. She said that he cares about her more than anything else in this world, and that's why she wants to change this city. Although winning the Vista tournament helped her achieve her goal of saving the orphanage, the system that applies to the world continues to create more and more poor neighborhoods. He asked if she had another wish for Grips, and she said that she wanted to free the city from the curse of the world system that enforces poverty all over the world. And that's when she noticed a car passing in front of her with a familiar looking girl inside, and she ran after the car. Julius walked through a blizzard with Ayato until they reached the remains of a broken house where she found her childhood friend Orfilia. She tried to convince her to come to her senses and leave the world she didn't belong in, but Orfilia told her that she was just following her destiny and couldn't change it. Julius had no choice but to use force on her and asked Ayato not to interfere and vowed that this time she would make sure to crush her school's badge. When she used her powers to attack her, Ayato was surprised to see that her power was able to stop Julius's flames, turn him into a solid substance, and break him into pieces. Julius was furious and continued to attack her, but Orfilia continued to block her attack attack with her magic power until she absorbed it into her sky-high energy and then targeted Jules to catch her and throw her away. Ayato rushed to catch her before she fell to the ground and found that she had become stained with Irinchikigel's suffocating gas. When Orfilia noticed his presence, she decided to target him with her power and offered him to leave immediately before he was killed, but he chose to protect Jules and block her. He then drew his sword and took a defensive stance against her dust. He used the sword to identify the properties of her power and found that her dust was a transparent gas that had no taste, color, or smell, and he soon found himself surrounded by an enormous amount of gas until he was unable to move. Their fight is interrupted by Gustav's voice telling Orfilia to back off as he has already been tasked with eliminating them. When she receives a call from Dirk scolding her for leaving the lab, she decides to leave immediately and leave them in Gustav's hands. After she cleared the way for him, he began to use his abilities and summon two multi-headed monsters. Ayato felt he was in trouble and unprepared for this kind of fight and ended up surrounded by them with Jules in his arms. Then one of the monsters surprised him with an attack from behind, but he quickly regained his balance and decided not to give up. Then he used the power of his sword to return the attack and managed to cut one of the two monsters in half with one blow. When the other monster approached him, Claudia appeared out of nowhere and tore his body to pieces, then turned to Gustav and said that she did not mind kicking his ass here and now, so he decided to withdraw for now after she ruined his golden opportunity to complete his mission, and Ayato lost consciousness next to Jules. Ayato regained consciousness in the evening and found himself in a bed with Saya and Kirin sleeping next to him. Then Jules came in and sat next to his bed and told him that he had been unconscious for 3 whole days and that everyone was always coming to visit him. Then she wanted to thank him for protecting her from Orfilia and Gustav. He asked her to tell him about her strained relationship with Orfilia, and she pulled out her handkerchief, feeling angry at the memory, and Ayato realized that it was Orfilia who had sewn the inscriptions on the handkerchief. Jules began to tell him her memories of Orfilia as a child, as she loved taking care of plants because she was honest and believed that if she was showered with love, she would return it to its owner, and she had a philosophy and viewpoint towards plants in general and their relationship with humans and did not dare to harm an insect. When Ayato compares her story to what he saw 3 days ago, she tells him that the wreck they went to when they first saw her was the result of Orfilia's rampage. The Foundation was launching a project called Fronlu, where a student from Alicante Academy, known as Magnum Opus, was conducting research on creating artificial genistella, and the guinea pig they used for this experiment was Orfilia, who they took as collateral to pay off the orphanage's debt to the Foundation. Orfilia ended up as the most powerful Striga in the world after the experiment failed to turn her into a genistella. The land around this abandoned place became corrupted and unlivable, and she was unable to get close to the plants she loved. When she first saw her in Asterisk, she realized how drastically she had changed after gaining so much power, and when she tried to stop her and force her to stop what she was doing, she couldn't match her. Then she tells Ayato that she's already decided to end it all on her own so that Orfilia can be normal again. Saya and Kirin are surprised that she realizes that they're awake and tells them that she's counting on them to support her in getting her childhood friend back, and they agree to take care of Gustav first. Flora rushes into the room and tells them that there are lizard-sized creatures flying around the city, scaring people, and the entire police force is dealing with them. Jules realizes that this is Gustav's doing to lure the police force protecting the orphanage into the city. She decides to head out to find him and stop him before he reaches the orphanage. The others insist on coming with her since they are indirectly involved, but she tells them she has a plan and they have to follow it. Jules and Ayato don't hesitate to attack him, but he moves a safe distance away, and when she asks about the orphanage, he tells her that the first thing he intends to do is get rid of them. He then used his power to summon a multi-headed dragon from the depths of the sea and destroyed part of the neighborhood, then left them to fend for themselves. Ayato suggested that they help the evacuated residents until the police arrived, but Jules realized that the dragon started attacking them as soon as he left. Jules realizes that he intends to fight the dragon alone, so he tells her that she knows the area better than he does and will help save a lot of lives until the rest of their friends arrive and save her some time. Then he got close enough to the dragon and managed to cut off one of the heads, but found that it could regenerate itself again. On the other side, Saya prepared to shoot the dragon from a distance after she finished preparing her weapons. Then she contacted Ayato to ask him about the plan to get rid of the monster, and he told her that they had to reach the head in the center to prevent the rest of the heads from regenerating. So she took a ready position to aim and tell Ayato which heads were regenerating while he tried to make room for them by cutting off the rest of the heads. Ayato continued to cut off the heads one by one, and when it was time to cut off the mother head, he was surprised that one of the heads regenerated early and was almost burned by the dragon's flames if he hadn't dodged it in time. Then the dragon managed to regenerate all the heads after buying himself some time by attacking Ayato. Jules appeared after finishing setting her traps to support Ayato and used the power of her flames to burn the dragon from all sides, while Ayato finished him off with a single blow from Cerberista, and they were able to finish him off and save what could be saved. Meanwhile, Gustav was impressed that but they were able to defeat the legendary dragon. Then he found Kirin approaching him after Julius guessed his location, and before he could use his power, Kirin took his life with a single blow from her sword, and the flying creatures began to fall like rain. On the other side, Claudia went to meet Mr. Nicholas, her father, and told him that they managed to catch Gustav, and it turns out that he was the one who hired him to go after Ayato and Julius. When she asked if it had anything to do with the wealthy group, he told her that he acted on his own. Claudia didn't believe it and thought it might be her mother's decision. He told her that she wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice him if necessary, and then begged her to back out of the Gripes Festival or at least change her goal, but she refused and quietly left. The next day, Jolbert expressed his gratitude that Ayato and his companions had protected the city and saved many lives, and told Julius that the townspeople would make another parade as they left. She approached him and said that she still intended to win the Gripes Festival and help expand the king's power throughout the kingdom. She added that what happened yesterday made her realize that in order to change the state of the city, she would have to prioritize, and she intended to carry all his burdens as governor of the city, and wondered if he could help her if she were to take his place. Jolbert was surprised that his sister had changed so much, as he never expected the day to come when she would ask for his help. He realized that it was thanks to Ayato and his comrades, and promised her that he would help her whenever she needed it. Ayato then received a call from Madiath to tell him that he had succeeded in finding his sister, so he rushed back to Asterisk, and Madiath accompanied him to the central district of the city's hospitals and told him that Haruka was transferred to this place 5 years ago and is considered clinically dead due to the effect of an ability on her body. Ayato realized that this was due to her own power, known as the energy prison, and the ability to seal powers, and that she deliberately sealed herself. He wondered if this would endanger her life, and Madiath told him that she would live longer if there was no change according to the doctors. Ayato leaves the hospital in a state of frustration after seeing his sister in this state. Then he is surprised when a mysterious girl appears in front of him, and it turns out that she knows his name and tells him that she can heal Haruka. And when he asks her about her identity, she tells him that her name is Helda Rollins, known as Magnum Opus. Ayato then meets his companions in Claudia's office at the academy to apologize for the trouble her father caused in Lysseltania, and when Kirin asks why he did it, he tells her that he's afraid of her winning the Gripes Festival because it would upset the wealthy group. Julius said that making an enemy of the wealthy group is exactly the same as making an enemy of the academy itself. Claudia said she has no intention of giving in to her desires and gave them the option of joining her team and making an enemy of the wealthy group. When it was Ayato's turn to make a decision, he thought that he had no intention of asking Magnum to help him save his sister, but at the same time he couldn't stand by and watch her die, so he decided to join the team in order to win the festival and treat his sister himself, no matter what the cost.